one of the largest taxes
It's
on the
not
American
just
public
that,
in
though.
history implemented by Mr. Business.
Well, it won't be a tax on the American public if American companies start producing here. Oh, let me give you
I
another
mean,
example of how these
it is a
tariffs are
tax
different.
on the American public if they're the ones who have to pay for it. They're paying higher prices for bananas because of the 10% tariff that was placed on
Oh
the
no,
country.
not the
Where we,
bananas. Like I mean,
what
like
do
you
you
gotta be
mean?
kidding
Not
me.
that? Oh no,
Oh
groceries.
lordy, man.
Introduce yourself for somebody who might not know you outside of now the lovely rancher who makes hats for Chance the Rapper's friends.
I'm Admiral Gibbs. I do like political content and variety content as well. So sometimes you see me do comedy, sometimes you see me do politics. I host Give Me a Break and the Debate Championship Series. It's pretty fun stuff.
Awesome. So the reason I have invited you onto today's stream is because you were there during my 24-hour election night stream. It didn't end up being 24 hours, like 16, 18 hours, but basically like a really long election night stream as we waited for the results to come in until we all knew that Donald Trump had won. And during that stream, I had a lot of people talking to me about the potentiality for the future. Because I think I would ask you, I was pretty quiet during that stream, wasn't I?
Yeah, I feel like you were pretty quiet
I was quiet
compared to
because
some people.
I was taking in information. You know, I was trying to register like, okay, Trump's president now. So what's going to happen now that that has been cleared? What's going to happen for the future of what's going on in Ukraine? What's this going to mean for the economy? What's this going to mean for the future of the United States? So I was trying to figure that out. And the people who were there to guide me was you. And not just you, but a few of our other friends. I believe Jeb Tan was also there. Cam Higby was also there, who was originally scheduled to actually be here for this conversation. But, you know, we had to reschedule due to, you know, who cares? A point is, though, now 100 days is almost gone. And that's usually seen as the first major marker of a president's, you know, legacy, the first 100 days. What were they able to achieve during that period? And it's really gone by very quick. At least to me, while a lot has happened, 100 days has gone by quick when it comes to the issues that I particularly care about and I know a lot of other people care about. And so I wanted to touch base with you and ask you, where do you think we are 100 days into Trump presidency almost by the end of this month, since our last conversation on the election night?
Yeah, I think that he's been pretty much fulfilling all what his campaign promises were, or attempting to. Right. This is maybe, I got to say, I'm 34 years old, right, and this is the first time in my life I like feel like a president has come in and set out from day one and ambitiously have tried to get everything done. Whether you like that or not is, I guess, a whole different debate, right? But he's come in, he's gone through the courts, he's executive orders, he's pressed legislation through like these are things he's pushing right on. Like the border was a major problem down here. It's done. It's some problem solved. I think that he nailed that one. The economy, I'm sure we're going to debate a lot of that here in a bit. But I feel like a lot of people, at least in my constituency, we've been saying we thought America's not been getting a fair shake for a while, and he's attempting to do things to change that. It looks like whether those are effective or not, I'm sure we'll get into. I mean, and just the sheer number of executive orders, and it really feels like he's come in and just really took off running. And I can't remember a president in my lifetime that's ever done anything like
I mean,
this.
he does have a record-setting amount of executive orders for the amount for this period in his administration.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, for sure. And it's just, I feel like so far it's been exactly what I expected. He wanted to change the focus from Russia to China. He wanted to get us out of the Mideast for the most part, and like enforce America's will at large. I feel like he's done both of those. And he's kind of like setting up free trade with the Houthis, and he's like, let's bomb them hard, hit them hard, and let's get out of here, kind of thing. He wants Europe to hold their fair share on things. He's domestically. Like I said, I mentioned beef prices. I find like it feels great to be a rancher right now, because for the first time it feels like we have a president that actually cares about us in the last like 20 years. Bush came in and he talked about a lot of things, didn't do much for us, and the left never does anything for us. And so I'm very happy like that. It feels like we're finally competing on a very even playing field. And as an agriculture person, and then with the border, I gotta say, like that's the issue a lot of people get me on here with is the border. And I mean, I've had family for the last 8 years have had property damage destroyed repeatedly by illegal aliens. I personally have had cattle killed by illegal aliens and coyotes as they come through. They've destroyed fencing, and overnight, it's almost it's almost insanity how it just overnight it stopped. And I got to give credit to Trump and Abbott on those two on that. And I don't know, pretty excited so far.
Okay, so that obviously covers a lot of areas. So I think we probably should segment
Sure.
this into areas, like not jump
Yeah,
from
absolutely.
economy over to like foreign policy over to this over that. There'll be some overlap,
Right.
obviously. Foreign policy and economy, go hand in hand, but we'll try to keep it generally segmented. I have a list, and it's just listed like economy, immigration, foreign policy, free speech, social issues. I have like these listed. So we'll just start from the top. Does that sound good?
Sure.
Okay, number one's the economy. Okay, let's just get this one out of the way. So I know that Trump got elected largely based off of economic anxiety. It wasn't the only reason he got elected, but when you polled people, when you asked independents who swung to Trump this election, a lot of them talked about inflation. A lot of them talked about housing prices. A lot of them, and a real estate developer, somebody thinks about that in their mind. Housing prices, real estate developer. Maybe it's somebody who could fix this issue. You have, these economic issues around interest rates and the difficulty with taking out loans and how much it's going to be, the access to capital. There's all these different economic issues, but grocery prices and inflation and housing prices were the big issues that seemed to be this election. And when I look at these three issues, housing prices, we haven't seen any movement on that. Now, there's a question as to say, how much can a president? He's not going to go out there and build millions of houses in 100 days. Yes, but he also hasn't announced anything. He also hasn't said that we're going to do this X, Y, and Z when it comes to building houses. This is the new executive order I'm passing. He's passing a lot of executive orders, nothing on housing yet. Maybe that'll be in the next 100 days, but that issue has yet to be attended to. Then you get to the issue of inflation. We're roughly speaking where we were before he got into office. I wouldn't say we're too worse off. I wouldn't say we're too better off. But the big issue, which I think was the thing that really killed Biden, was grocery prices. Because it's the type of politics you can't escape from. It's the type of politics that no matter what you put on social media, the price is the price at the end of the day. And those haven't gone down. In fact, those prices have gone up. And it's not just grocery prices where there's now a crisis. There's a consumer crisis in all sorts of industries, whether it has to come with, cars, whether it has to come to certain consumer goods that are based heavily in electronics, anything that has to deal with like heavily imported goods. And I remember Harris saying this, and I know it was politics, but it was good politics. She said by this time next year, midway into this year, when she said it on the campaign trail, we would be entering a recession if Trump's tariff policies were put in place. And we're not yet entering a recession. I'm hoping and praying we don't enter a recession because I want my grandmother to retire. But the odds of a recession, whether you listen to Goldman Sachs or any of the other big financial institution, the odds continue to go up. Consumer confidence is down. Investor confidence is down. The economy is in a measurably worse place than it was 100 days ago. And this was the thing he got elected on. So I mean, this is something he is failing to deliver on, and the polling data seems to indicate it too. Like American people, for the first time, are giving Trump some terrible numbers on the economy that we haven't seen since like what 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah, I won't. Okay, so let's talk about the polls first. I won't. The polls are saying something interesting. I won't. I won't say that I'm like a Republican that's just like the polls are bullshit. That's why Trump got elected. I'm not one of those. I think polls are useful tools, right? How I don't put as much stock, but the polls are kind of saying some interesting things. Democrats have like record no approval numbers. Trump, he's maybe like not doing as well with the economy, wise with like independence and stuff. But Republicans seem to love him a lot more. There's a poll that came out today that I was just reading, like as we went live, that say that more Republicans identify with MAGA than as Republicans than ever before. And this is kind of interesting. I don't know what that means. Is this MAGA the new party? Who knows? There's all sorts of interesting things that we're coming to the polls. But let's just kind of go through some of these things you're talking about. Housing is a really interesting one as well. What's interesting to me is where the housing problems are, right? So I live in San Antonio. I'm not worried about getting doxxed, but like I have a house in San Antonio. I also have a house on my ranch. But in San Antonio, for example, and Austin, and really Texas in general, housing is going up crazy. I mean, the amount of houses being built are just, I mean, literally the neighborhood like next to mine, right? They put up 8 houses in maybe this one area in less than a week and a half. And I'm like, how are they getting it? But like they're out there Like, and this is like all across the city. There's like going up. Same thing with Austin. Same thing with like towns all over Texas. And then I look at somewhere like California, where housing is clearly a crisis. And what this tells me is that it's actually a local problem to an extent, right? That's exacerbating it, right? Is it the Democratic policies where they're over giving all the social programs? Is there reasons why, like, oh, we have $5 million homes that really should be whatever? I mean, these are all things I think we need to factor in. Should Trump put a bill out or do some kind of executive order on it? I don't know. I know a lot of millennials. I think you're a millennial, right? I'm not sure. Correct me if
No,
I'm wrong, but
I'm a
just
Zoomer.
for the, okay. Okay, fair enough. I know a lot of millennials like myself are almost hoping the housing market crashes. So we like that, not me, but like others, or so they can buy their first homes, right? Because I think there's a stat that the biggest transfer of wealth in history is going to be when like the two generations above us start
Hmm.
dying. And I guess people just don't like to wait. And that's kind of the same thing I'd say with the Trump economy right here, right now, is that when I look at it, like I mentioned beef right earlier, like, yeah, beef prices are high. But in Texas, for example, we had all the halal markets, all the halal butchers, and all the kosher butchers, which is not that many, I'll admit, have had to like close down or like remove or move to like areas where there's more of their customer base because right now beef prices are high and supply is low. But demand could increase, supply could increase, and the prices would stay high, right? And so what I've been saying is yeah, maybe we're getting hurt, but this is kind of what Trump is advocating for. Is he wants manufacturing to come here, but when it's not just manufacturing, it's also like secondary industries. So like as like the beef industry, the Texas beef industry, the national beef industry grows, you're gonna have secondary markets like your butchers, which are skilled labor, right? You're gonna need skilled labor for butchers. You're gonna need logistical support. You're gonna need all these things, and all that's gonna grow. And I'm using beef just as a microcosm, as like an example of other industries, because I know like cars is one. You know, we're looking right now with China saying they can sell us these things direct. Like this is interesting. I don't know if this is actually going to hurt American students. It might hurt major American businesses like I don't know if this is actually American, but like Gucci or Prada, right? Or Lululemon. I think that's Canadian. But say he sets these up and we start buying directly. Well, the average American is going to be able to get their now luxury handbag for like $100 compared to like 38,000 or $1,000 compared to whatever. And it's like, oh, these people, that's going to stimulate the economy. That's going to cause more spending. Yeah, China's going to get some of that. But now these people are out
Wait,
going around. I
so
don't know.
we're gonna be making $100 Prada bags, or the Chinese, or we're gonna buy knockoffs?
Well, no, they're real, they're legit, the same brand bag, but they're buying direct from the manufacturer. That's been the news I've seen today. Is that they're releasing the direct links to the manufacturers, so consumers will have more money to spend on other goods now instead of having to spend one item on these luxury items, which means more money spent at home. Wouldn't that? I mean, that sounds like a good thing.
I
I don't know.
Well, but that's none of that has to do. That's not done by Trump. I mean, this is people
What do you mean it's not
finding
done by Trump?
these are people finding ways around in order to get cheaper products now that there are tariffs play. Okay, wait.
No,
Let's
that's
go
a
back.
direct response to that. That's a China. The Chinese factories are saying, "Oh, well,
Yeah,
don't
but
buy it
that
from
was so.
Prada, buy
But
it from us direct."
yeah, so that wasn't Trump. That was the Chinese
Yeah,
company.
because Trump's put a tariff on them.
And so
They're
now,
responding to the tariffs.
okay, so what
And they're
what?
also communist owned, remember? So it is the government that is telling these companies what to do. It's
Okay.
not like America where they're totally free trade. You got to
So
remember,
people can get
because they're saying
a cheaper Prada bag. Okay. So
sure,
we can go back to housing for a second. So Trump has done nothing
sure.
on housing. I'm happy we both agree on this at least.
As far as I
But
know,
the
yeah.
reason why you say is because it's local. Now, it is local, it is partially local, but Trump also said on the campaign trail that he was going to build baby build. He was going to build houses, he was going to deal with the housing crisis by building, and he hasn't done anything. He hasn't said anything, he hasn't announced anything. So we haven't got anything done on the front of building housing on any large scale or anything on the build baby build scale outside of just some chitter chatter here and chitter chatter there. So we haven't got anything done on housing. Now, that's a major issue for American people, but again,
Well,
he's
what do
not.
you want? What do you want him to do? By like when you say build baby build, when
Well,
I
I
envision
mean,
build
like,
baby
well,
build,
yeah,
I
let me
see
just
that
give you an
happening.
idea,
What
right?
do you mean by that?
I
Sure.
believe that if Trump put half as much time into this rebuild Gaza from the ground up, like hotel, or any of these wacky ideas that are never going to happen, just because like there's not a possibility for, there's just not no political avenue. There might be big bold ideas. If he takes that time and directs it towards how can we invest in American companies to build and make jobs here, building homes here, how do we put contracts out there for these companies to build homes in the United States? How do we make funds available to localities to build these homes? How can we work with them to try to cut down zoning regulations? If Trump wants the big, deregulator in chief, zoning regulations is a big part of the reason why it's bad in
I
localities.
agree.
And he's going to have to work. The federal government should advise these states, advise these counties, advise these governments, hey, here's the waste. Cut here, cut here, cut here. That would be a Trumpian philosophy of maybe approaching
Sure.
housing. I've heard nothing, right? Like I'm
Let me,
trying,
yeah.
I'm trying to look at it even from his angle, and we haven't seen any movement from the build baby build guy. And remember, this is the real estate developer, but he's dreaming about building properties in Gaza, not in the United States.
Yeah, Gaza is an interesting thing we can talk about, but yeah, on the housing thing. Well, let's look at that though, right? So yeah, he's the deregulator in chief. So one of his first bills, first executive orders he put through was about the housing affordability. He wanted to do record low, but I admit he hasn't done anything since then, right? I, I, it's interesting because homelessness is at a record high. Right, but it's been doing that since Biden, and so I guess it's now Trump's turn to clean up Biden's mess. And the complaint you're making is
Wait,
kind of
can you
rich
tell me?
because Biden did this.
Can you just tell me how Biden caused the homelessness crisis? Because this
Well,
is my problem, right?
sure,
Well, no, I could just say
sure.
homelessness is a crisis that has been passed from administration to administration and administration, but it has always seemed to be just spawned into existence by the last admin. Biden didn't deal with it. Obama didn't deal with it. Bush didn't deal with it. Clinton didn't deal with it. None of these people deal with it. They might have put a Band-Aid here and Band-Aid there, but it's not Biden's problem. It didn't manifest into existence just because he's the recent political opponent of Donald Trump.
Uh, well, no, I feel like so that's actually not true. Obama, who I'm not even a huge fan of, but Obama had record low homelessness. So that's just unequivocally
Well,
not
no,
true.
Mike.
What you
Here's my
just
way.
said.
No, my statement. By the way, I don't like what you're doing when it comes to it was low, therefore it's the president's reason. The president did it. Obama. It was low during
No,
Obama,
no,
therefore Obama caused low homelessness. My statement is the homelessness issue. Right, there was no radical change in policy between these administrations when it came to homelessness and how to deal with it in a transformative way to have kind of systemic change that'll last between administration because homelessness is going to be affected by things like the economy downturns but the social safety net systemic changes you need to put in place so that through those waves of the economy you don't have huge spikes in homelessness. No president has taken that approach yet to put those structural changes in place. And so I mean I'll give Obama credit for the homelessness rate being lower, but my mom was homeless during that period, so I know there was still homelessness during that period. So I'll give a certain amount of
so
credit.
well, okay. Let me. I think you may be taking it a little bit differently than I intended. Let me try. So when I talk about homelessness, I think I even did this on one of your shows that I was on. We talked about homelessness that under Biden being at a 15-year high. And the reason I brought it up at that time was because I believe homelessness is an economic indicator. Now, I know that it's not a traditional economic indicator that most economists want to use, but I personally think it is an economic indicator. So when I bring up Obama having record low, I'm actually giving credit to him doing well with the economy. Like he had some policies like Clash for Clunkers, which was a wild success. I think he had policies that helped the economy, which in turn helped homelessness lower. I think under Biden, the economy was suffering, and thus thus homelessness was high. That's kind of my direct correlation there. So when I look at stuff that's been done, I see. I'm just doing a quick Google search right while we're talking. It looks like Trump has done a few things. Right, he's moved some of the EPA red tape for LA fire victims. I know, here, like I said, in Texas,
Well, wait.
it's growing.
Okay.
It's going to,
Okay. So he's cutting red tape so people can rebuild the houses that were already lost in the fire. Now,
sure, but
I agree
that's
that has to do with that has to do more with disaster recovery than it has to do with dealing with homelessness as a systemic issue.
I mean, well, it's part of the issue, right? Like if
Well,
you had
well,
a ton of houses
well,
burned
yeah,
and you're
he
homeless,
actively
getting a
stopped.
rebuild gets
Well,
people
yeah, that
free.
actively helps stop an extra 50,000 or 100,000 people being homeless. But that's not dealing with the problem. That's stopping the problem from getting worse, or at least helping the problem not get worse quicker.
Sure. Okay. But so back to what I'm saying though, right? Okay. I get it. Not gonna get worse quicker. It's still okay. A problem that's going to increase homelessness, right? He's getting rid of it. He's trying to stop that little specific thing. It's once again a regional issue that's like changed. And this is kind of where I'm going with this. Is Trump has at the macro level given the approval to do this, and I guess at the micro level he hasn't laid out a lot of policy.
What wait, but
However,
what macro level thing did he give approval to do? They could build
well,
houses
he's
before.
right off the bat he did. In his thing. Hold on, I got the bill here. The executive order. He signed an executive order addressing the crisis. He ordered executive departments and agencies to deliver emergency price relief to lower housing costs, expand housing supply among other goods. Executive branch heads were directed to report back regularly on implementation. Right.
Okay,
So,
what does that mean without
like,
all the politicians speak?
sure, I will say this. It means that get started on this problem. That's what it means.
Get
That's like
started
in
on the
like
problem. Isn't
right.
that
So
something
like
maybe you do on the campaign trail, or you talk
no,
about what
that's
you're.
something you do.
Well, no, I would say, like, for example, if someone came up to me, Dylan, what do we do about homelessness? Build. Okay, well, that's not. You need a little bit more than that. No.
No, no, absolutely not. See, this is the issue that you're doing right here. One is everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the face, right? Like that's the famous Mike Tyson quote, right? So
Or
here's
no
what he's
plan
doing.
at
He
all
gets
in
in
some
office.
instances in this, and
Well,
we'll get into that
well,
later.
once you get in office, he's got to see what the data is, and okay, well,
So
here's
what
the
was his
situation
plan
as it
before
lies.
then? What was his plan before?
Well, I don't know. I'm not privy to that, but like
So how do
he
you
doesn't
know
have
he
to
even
tell
had a
me.
plan?
Well, he said that he was going to make housing a priority,
Like
and he's got a
what
long
wouldn't it
history of real
be,
estate development.
how would we be able to tell a difference between going in there with no plan and then trying to come up with one versus going in there with a plan, getting smacked in the face, and then having to start with scratch if we
Well, which
aren't
is
privy to
actually
that
better.
information?
Well, what would actually be better in that situation? I'll tell you personally, I often like to go in with fresh face with no plan in some situations if I think that I have the adequate team to handle it, as opposed to having some idea of a plan and then going in there and trying to
Yeah,
implement a
but
plan without having all the
but he's
data first.
also
Sometimes it's better to collect the data and then make an attack plan.
I understand, but this is also not a game of like tennis. He's the president of the United States
Oh yeah, it's
who
more important to see the
also
presidency.
so happens to be a real estate developer. If there's any
Well,
area that
exactly.
he should have had some ideas, it should be housing.
Well, okay, just use that own logic then. If this is an area that he's an expert in,
It's the
then
only
hey,
area he's an expert in. Literally
sure,
the only
sure.
one.
The only if that's fine. If this is, and it is, then he probably doesn't need to have just I because he's done many different plans in many different situations. He probably has the situation where I'm in line. Hey, if I go to one of my sales teams and one sales team's underperforming in like Germany and another sales team's underperforming in Florida, and I go over to my Florida team, I'm not going to come with the same plan that I would for the German team because they're different demographics, right? So he's probably going, I've had all these other situations in my life. Let's go in there, let's see what the data is, and then let's make an appropriate plan. That's what I would hope.
Yeah, but he was already
Personally.
president for 4 years. So this, like, oh, let's think about that should already be kind of like
Oh yeah,
maybe
things
if this
changed in
was his
4 years.
first day on the job, it still wouldn't excuse not having a plan. But he was president for 4 years and he won the second time. He had months to prepare even before going in there. We're 100 days in. Like at a certain point, like when is it? Oh, I'm ready. Like, okay, he's
Well,
prepared. He's
it's
pulled his
twofold.
hand. He's ready to punch and tell us all what his plan is. And he's holding. He's holding. He's holding. He's hold. At what point do we say, okay, maybe it's because there's nothing in his hand?
Okay, well, let me hit you with another alternate scenario, right? So we have Trump, the great deregulator, as you said earlier, right? So we've already seen him try to like deregulate, even in California with the EPA protections on the specific thing with the fire, which
Yeah, the
you took
fires.
umbrage with. That's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Well, I'm not saying
We
it's
don't have
bad.
to
I'm
go to
just
that.
saying it doesn't deal with the issue that we're talking about. Not a
Sure,
bad thing. It's a
but
disaster
it's
recovery.
you also have to realize though, right, that say like I'm going to use Abbott for example because I'm very familiar with Texas politics, right? Abbott has turned around now that he's got Trump's blessing, and he's let local areas deregulate a lot of zoning stuff, and that's part of the reason why Texas is having a housing boom right now. Like all across Dallas, Fort Worth, San Antonio, Houston, Corpus Christi, all Midland and Odessa, out in the middle of fucking bumfuck Egypt, are out here blowing up, right, in housing. But then I look at California struggling. Why? Well, is it because of Trump or is it because of the overregulation in certain areas? And so maybe Trump doesn't have to give it when he's already getting
Well, here's
support
the
by his
problem.
Republican
Okay,
governors to expand. Yeah, I
here's
mean, like,
in some environments, there is a better market to build. And Texas is in one of those much better markets to build due to a whole. It's not just regulation; it also has to do with local economic factors outside of that. But it is. Well, let me finish.
ah,
Let me finish. It also has to do with regulation. But for example, here in Maryland, this is the state I'm familiar with. There's a problem when it comes to how much land you have. Texas is a gigantic state. Maryland, we're talking about areas that have geographic diversity, but areas like Baltimore, 1/3 of the city is historic buildings, right? You're bumping into stuff that, like, famous I'm not kidding. Like 1/3 of it has the most historic buildings of any city in the United States. And when you're talking about big urban centers, what you're going to have to do is destroy old properties or build up on the properties that are currently existing or expand the urban center. These are the options you have. And in order to do any of this, you're going to need pretty low interest rates, which is something that Trump has always talked about wanting, and he wanted to fight the Fed over it many times. But right now, we're having a problem, not just with interest rates when it comes to just across the general economy and borrowing, but also when we're talking about the securities that our government relies upon for our dollar to be strong and our government to be able to borrow and subsidize and, subsidize farmers or build the economy of the 21st century. And so right now, I would agree that Texas is a really good place to build, but if these interest rates are further fucked, we're going to be in a really difficult place to build, even in Texas, because you need be able to borrow capital in order to build. Now,
so I get
after this, can we make sure can we move off after this? Can we move off housing, because this is the area we have to least to talk about, because Trump hasn't done much on this. So I want to.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was just. Yeah, I'll be quick. I was just gonna say. I mean, that's a really interesting thing. Like Houston is taking the build like more urban center, right? I don't know what you do about the historical buildings, because I like history, right? I want to preserve it, but at some point you got to decide what's more important, history or building the housing. And then this is interesting, and this leads to a whole different debate that I don't really think is relevant. We don't need to talk about it, but is what your feelings on are like immigration between states, because I guess another answer would be, well, if there's no room in Maryland, then you got to immigrate to like Maine or Michigan, or I don't know, wherever there's Montana, like
I don't want to catch all the other 49 state diseases.
Mm-hmm. No, I feel you. I don't want to leave my state either, but it's I don't know. But we can move on from housing. What else you got?
I mean, do you know the other states have crabs that aren't blue?
That sounds terrible. We got blue crabs.
Beautiful blue crabs. Okay, wait. So I wanted to talk about that manufacturing thing you brought up. We can stay on the economy because the economy is a big topic.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Manufacturing. This is an issue that the vast majority of Americans, want to see manufacturing back in the United States. Right now, that doesn't mean that we need to trade every service job for a manufacturing job. If you ask most Americans, would you like to work on the factory line? Only 20 to 23% of Americans actually say yes. So we want manufacturing here, but there's only a certain section of the economy that wants to work these jobs. So we got to find these jobs for those people, right? So that's what we need to do, and make them good jobs where they got benefits, that they can pass those jobs on to their kids if they so please. And I don't know if we agree on this, but maybe a good union job so it can have a certain amount of security and better benefits, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't like unions, but that's fine. Go ahead.
Okay.
I mean, they voted for Trump, so.
Hey, it may almost like it has to do with maybe the workers a little bit more and what the workers want a little bit more than some people have always led it to believe. But
listen, Texas doesn't have unions, right? But like, this is the beautiful states like having their own cultures, and I think this is a good thing. Is like, say what's good for Texas where we don't have unions might not be good for like Detroit, where they have
no unions in Texas. They've been banned.
Well,
you just send a Pinkertons in, you kick in the door, and don't organize.
I think there's like the teachers union and like the police union and a few others, but Texas is a right to work state, so unions don't have very much power.
Yeah.
Like they could fire you for like anything. Like if I'm just like, I don't like the way he looks, I don't like the way he smells, like you could fire him for anything and you don't have to give a reason.
Yeah, that's I don't like that.
Sure. I mean, there's pros and cons, but so with unions is interesting because unions did vote for. When I talk manufacturing, everybody immediately goes to like working on the line, but I want people to realize manufacturing is not just working on the line. Manufacturing is also like packaging, but it's also agriculture. Like you're making the food. That's what you're making for everybody. Now I know that's not traditionally what people think of when you think of manufacturing.
Okay, this is the problem. No, I think the problem is people think of on the line, and in their mind they think of like some dingy factory with a light bulb flying over their head, and they're like, and they're basically a machine for the rest
Right.
of their life. That's what they think of. Now, with
Sure.
some of the jobs that we're seemingly trying to retract back to the United States, that's what you would get if you want to make them at a price that American consumers what you would buy. And this is the problem. This is the crisis we've run into, is that as much as AI and robotics has advanced, it hasn't advanced to the point where you can make the goods that are being currently made in places like Vietnam, which we asked Vietnam to make these goods as an alternative to the Chinese controlling our our trade routes of cheap consumer goods to the American market. We can't take that over the United States and sell them at the same prices. The prices are going to go up. How much they go up, it's impossible to say all the factors are going to go into it, but it's going to be a lot that's going to affect
Well, yeah, they'll go up
consumers.
initially. They'll go up initially,
No,
right?
they'll
The
go up
key.
across. No, they'll go up permanently. They'll go. I
Yeah,
mean,
but if everybody's
the question is whether or not the price increase will be balanced out by general economic benefit enough that it'll be worth it, right?
so once yes, but no. Like that's not necessarily true, and this is why I keep coming back to ag, right? Like
You
because
wait.
if you look
So
at like
let me just. I'm sorry.
corn,
This will be my last question, and I swear I'll let you talk. Do you
yeah,
really
go ahead.
believe that it is possible to produce pencils or electronics cheaper in the United States than in Vietnam?
Well, so once again, I'm gonna say yes, but no, right? And like it's like when if tomorrow if I built a factory and I wanted to produce pencils, absolutely not. It would not be cheaper, right? Like let's just get that clear. I understand, but 5 years from now, or 3 years from now, or even 1 year from now, after I have AI designing it, and I have my employees, who knows? Like once my
It's
suppliers are set up here, it's totally different. Like you can't say that you don't know to be made. And let me give you to come back to like the ag thing,
Gibbs.
right?
Gibbs,
Like look at
you own a
corn.
ranch, right? You own a ranch.
Sure,
How,
sure,
how
but
much? How
I
much
can
do
use
you pay your workers? Like, I'm not like, is it is it something where they can feed themselves?
yeah. Oh, if you work for Gibbs, you make a lot of money. Let me
Okay,
tell you that.
yeah, so that's the
Yeah, you're doing
problem,
good.
right? That's the problem, is it's not just a question of like because in some countries, like, we're not going to grow bananas in Vermont, right? If you place a tariff on this country, you're just going to get more expensive bananas. You're not going to be able to replace that domestically. Well, science isn't there yet, okay? Maybe in the future it'll get there, but even when it does, it'll probably be cheaper to put it in the goddamn ground than in the science chamber, you know? I think the farmers have kind of figured it out much before a lot of the big pencil neck geeks.
That's
But the
but that's not true.
wait,
That's
wait,
not
wait. No,
true
this
at
is my
all.
problem. It's we're hoping that science is going to save our economy. That's what we're betting this on. We're
No,
hoping that the
that's not what's
robots
happening at
and the
all.
AI is going to be able to make up
No,
for the business acumen and ingenuity of the Vietnamese or all
no.
these other people that we've traded with and built this global economy. And I just
Why?
don't think that's possible. At least not
Okay,
now.
okay. Okay, I'm gonna come back. Okay, let's try this again because I think you're once again you're equating the manufacturing only with like physical things, and you're not looking at like as like the ag industry as a whole, right? Like I'm gonna use corn and grain right now, right? But the reason beef prices are so high is twofold. One is because overregulation and tariffs against and other things that are like predatory against U.S. beef, right? Like in Trump's first term, he got the European Union to start accepting 10K more tons, so 40K total. I think it's 46K. I could be off, but it's 40 something tons now of U.S. beef per year, right? Okay. Now, I just want you to just get like perspectives, numbers wise.
Uh-huh.
I this month sold 31 calves for $41,000. They were about 400 pounds each, but we'll call them 500 pounds just for the easiest. And the average beef cow is about 1390 in my it's like full grown steer is about 1390 pounds to 1450, but we'll just call them 1500 for round numbers, right? So it takes about a year or so to reach that size, a year and a half to reach the 1,500 pounds, 30 or 90 pounds, right? Now, we sell those to other producers. They raise them to full production, to full size, and then they resell them. All right, right there, that is already like 1% of the total of what's going to be shipped, like tonnage wise, to like the like European Union overall, and that's a very small order, right? Like within a year. And so when we're being like blocked out of entire markets like this, and they're putting restrictions like, oh, you have to have, oh, our cows can't have this hormone, our cow can't
Yeah,
has to be grass fed, et cetera, et cetera. This is not fair. Then we would look at grains, right? The U.S. grain market has collapsed because of European restrictions on grain and imports and whatnot, right? There's all sorts of things. And so when Trump is putting tariffs and they're making them play at an even footing with American farmers, yeah, that's going to raise prices at the grocery store a little bit. But now, after about 6 months of doing this, you'll see about a season or two, because guess what? The science, you're right, already did figure out how to grow crops in the off seasons, right? So you'll see that for a lot of them, for the big mainline ones. So what you're going to see is now, as they are able to sell their crops at a profitable margin, they're going to be able to increase yield, and then they're going to turn around and be able to sell that, and thus you're going to keep the crop prices at a profitable margin for American farmers, and then that's going to lower the cost for American consumers. But it's not going to happen tomorrow. It's going to happen in like about a year or 6 months or so, right? Like that's when you're going to see the results. So it's kind of like what Professor I once knew said: it's either the pain now or the pain later. And we're not even talking about national security reasons. You're pro-Ukraine. I'm pro-Ukraine, right? I own a lot of military-industrial complex stocks. Do I want China to have a chokehold on us and not be able to keep producing missiles and whatnot?
wait, can I ask you a quick question? I'm sorry to interrupt
your.
your rant. Can I ask you,
Sure.
how did our military-industrial complex stocks do since Trump has entered office, by the way?
I've done great. I mean, I got Modi in like 2 weeks ago to buy something, and he's up 30% in his last Raytheon purchase. So, yeah, I mean,
No,
it
I'm
just
not.
depends.
I'm asking, how have the stocks been since Trump entered office? Not how people purchased recently buying dips. I
They're
mean,
up.
they're all up.
They're up.
Let me check.
Well, I don't know about all up, but there's some. Most of them are up overall since he took office.
I'll
They
check.
took some hits recently, but they're, yeah. I mean, I'm doing great in the stock market. I mean, it's not that hard, guys. You just got to do a modicum of research and not expect to get rich overnight. But yeah, I mean, I can't say they're all up, but like I said, Raytheon's up since January. I mean, they all took a dip recently, but they go up again. But regardless, I mean,
I
either
don't.
you want this, you still want the
You said
manufacturing at home, don't you?
you said it's up. I don't know. I mean, the market generally doesn't look up. Okay, whatever you say. I'm not gonna go look at it right now. I don't want to look through the market debate. But right
I mean,
now,
I
the
don't know about the
European
whole
defense
market
stocks are the ones
being
that are
up.
popping off. It's the European defense stocks right now that everybody's fucking the investors are flipping out about. Rheinmetall and these companies massively expanding due to big investments. German getting rid of the debt cap entirely for defense spending. That's something you don't see every day. And so right now, what I hear is all the commotion is in European defense stock, because the Europeans are now controlling for the externality that America is not a dependable ally.
Oh yeah, I mean, absolutely. That's definitely going to be true for the European defense companies. I would maybe look into buying some of those myself, right? I mean, like as somebody pulls out, a different market share grows. I mean, it's all relative. I mean, both can be true at the same time. Like you can have a U.S.
So
company doing well and European ones do well. I mean, that's not necessarily true. I mean, but when I'm looking at this,
So
right?
you want these tariffs to hurt now so we can get better trading conditions
Sure, yeah.
later.
I mean, do you
So in
think
the
it's
long
fair
run,
what
okay,
like they're
but
doing?
here's my thing. To a certain extent, I agree that we should be negotiating for better trading conditions, but we're negotiating with no sense, right? We're negotiating in a way. For example, when we say that this is a reciprocal tariff for tariffs, they should be for tariffs. They should not be for things that are not tariffs. They should not just be an equation that really equates to, okay, it's actually just about the trade deficit. Because Vietnam did not have no 90% tariff with the United States. Vietnam in the United States has one of the friendliest trading relationships in the world. The effective Vietnamese tariff rate on American goods is 1.1%. So we're off by a margin of 88.9%, right? So that's a significant difference. And for a lot of these countries that got 10% tariffs, right? Like Ukraine or these other ones, they don't have reciprocal 10% tariffs. A lot of them actually have tariff rates that are like 0.5 or 0.8%, but none of them rounds down. So all of them just immediately rounded up to 10%. It also did not include the service economy, meaning that nation states like Switzerland, which should have no trade deficit with the United States at all if you include the service sector, all of a sudden has a 15 to 25 billion dollar trading deficit with the United States because our service economy doesn't matter anymore. So not only did it not have to do with reciprocal tariffs, it had to do with trade deficits, which the United States is going to have with nation states like Vietnam, which cannot buy Ford F-150s for every Vietnamese villager to drive around in their little communities when they have cheaper alternative Chinese trucks they can get for 1 to 2K from right across the border to the north. You're not going to be able to compete there. And so making it about trade deficits sets yourself up to fail, which is why Trump has backed off on a lot of these tariffs when it comes to electrical goods, when it comes to the Vietnamese, when it comes to a lot of these countries where it originally didn't make sense. And so he started backing off of them. And so for me, like, I understand wanting better trading conditions, but you would need to start with a negotiating strategy and a tariff strategy that could make comprehensible sense for those you're trying to negotiate against, or at least have some element of fairness attached to them. And it doesn't just seem like you're just kind of flipping the table and say, give me a better deal.
Well, first of all, I actually love it when people flip the table and say it's a better deal. I don't think fairness should matter at all. Fuck that. Sorry, I think maybe this is where we differ. I am not a globalist at all, and maybe I think this is part of the reason why I've been able to predict Trump's actions to an extent. And I think there's stereotypes are true for a reason, right? Like when you think of like the Texas oil man, he's loud, he's like aggressive in his sales stuff. He's like, ha, ha, ha. You think of like the New York real estate mogul, you know, he's cutthroat, he's kind of like unpredictable, you know, and I think Trump kind of fits this mold, you know. And I just recently finished reading all of Trump's books that he's either wrote or ghostwritten or whatever, you know. And you have to. I also realize he's friends with like the McMahons, right? The McMahon family and how they do business. And I know this sounds dumb.
Yeah, wait, when you say
like,
Trump does business like the McMahon family, do you mean like he shits on his employees on the face, or do you mean what do you mean?
No, I mean like he's unpredictable. You never know what he's going to do. I don't think he's over.
Well, that's
maybe, I don't know.
unpredictable.
Maybe he did the golden shower thing like he was accused of. Who knows? I don't care about his sexual proclivities unless he's like, I don't know, diddling people. But
well, Vince McMahon is in a massive like sexual abuse scandal, isn't he?
Sure. Yeah, he is a problem. Now, I'm like, but he's done like business with him for years. Linda McMahon's in his cabinet, right? So
I mean, she knows so much about education. I mean, it made so much sense to make her the education secretary because she did get power slammed through a table. I mean, that is. I mean, how a lot of kids probably watch that. Education.
Sure. Education. Yeah, I mean, if she wants to gut it, I mean, that's kind of what people want people to do that voted for them to, you know, they don't like the Department of Education. I don't have super strong feelings on that one, but I will say this, that when I say that he does business like the man, I like a New York stereotypical business person. I think that I'm like, okay, what's he gonna do? Well, he's kind of trying to get us away from this globalist position because he thinks we've been fucked. I also think we've been fucked. So he's trying to create, like, I guess what it seems like is almost like a new American empire mindset. Like, be proud of America. We're going to build stuff here. These people have been taking advantage of us. And so what he's done is he's like bullied everybody. And he's been unfair. And he goes, well, y'all been unfair with us. Y'all taking advantage of people some way or somehow. Y'all played the game well. Well, guess what? We're going to change. Instead of playing Monopoly, we're now going to play Risk. Flip the table, just like you said. And I think that's a good thing because now people don't know what game they're playing. And I don't have a problem with that. Like, you know.
You don't have a problem with investors and companies holding back their money because they're scared to invest or they don't know what's going to happen. And they think it would be better to take their money out of securities for the U.S. dollar, increase bond yields, which then makes it harder for the United States to this chaos, controversy. This creates good TV. This creates good media. This creates fun. This does not create stable markets. This does not create a confident environment for an investor to operate in. We saw the bond yields increase. That money came out of those safe securities and U.S. bonds. That's not something you can like entertain your way out of. And that's a situation that's still going on. Those bond yields increased and they haven't gone back down.
Well, we just talked about housing. Do you disagree that if a housing market crashed, that people that could never be able to afford a market suddenly could? Like, I'm not saying that's a good thing necessarily overall, but I
Wait.
am
What does that have
saying
to do?
it,
If bond yields keep
well, hold
increasing,
on,
we will have a
hold
debt
on.
crisis. There's no case where the government has a debt crisis, spirals. Is this really where the
We already
Republican
have a
Party
debt
is?
crisis.
Oh,
We
bond
already
yields
have a debt
increasing. Who
crisis.
cares? So the
What do
Republicans
you
don't care that
mean?
we have a debt crisis now. It
We
doesn't
already have
matter.
a debt
See,
crisis.
we're
Well,
setting
this is
ourselves we're
this is
setting ourselves
rich.
up for the Trump debt crisis. Oh, what do you mean? Fiscal responsibility? I've never heard of her.
What's the debt number when Trump took office, right? Like, well,
It
it's rich that the left
25
is called crying about
Trump
the debt,
increased the
like
debt
saying that we don't
massively.
care. Yeah, so
25% of our national debt is Trump's.
right. So you're saying that? Oh, okay. Listen,
He
the
said
debt
that he
has
was
been
going to get
going
rid
up
of our
as
debt
long as I've
and
been
he
alive.
said on the campaign trail that he was going to get rid of the debt in
But
4 years. He
he's making
increased it
attempts to do that with
massively.
Doge and all sorts of shit. What I'm
Oh, it's on
saying
the
is y'all
campaign trail. Lie. It doesn't
it's
matter. He's a
not a lie.
politician.
I mean,
Remember, guys, Trump's a straight
it's not a
shooter.
lie.
So when he lies to us, it's okay because he's a straight shooter. He's not like the other politicians. He lies just like
This
the
is
rest of
just
them.
BDS. Is what this
Come
is. Listen,
on. Come
no,
on,
well, okay.
Gibbs.
Hold on. How are you gonna sit
Look
here with a
me in the
straight
eye.
face?
Come on.
How are you gonna tell me with a straight face that Trump doesn't care about the debt, and then he should care about it when I just watched for the last like all my life nobody gave a shit about the debt, and this guy's the first guy attempting to do anything about it.
He
At
hasn't
least
done
he's
any.
attempting to
How
do
has he
something.
done anything
What do you mean?
about
He's
it?
got the Doge going in there cleaning stuff up. He's
What
done
is
well.
Doge?
I
How
think
much is
He's
Doge?
got the tariffs going out there. What he even threw
How
out.
is
He's throwing out other ideas they're considering with
eh,
the sovereign debt fund based off tariffs. Like, I mean, he's renegotiating trade deals. He's
none of
pushing for
this?
manufacturing here. This is
None
all
of
things that are helping increase the debt.
the
Like,
thing.
what do you
The
mean?
tariffs are not going to be the thing that gets rid of the debt. This is if this was 1883, maybe that's
No,
how
but the
trade. Let
trade deals will help.
okay.
I mean,
So
like,
no. Let me again. If this was 1883 and we were all wearing like fucking powdered wigs and going chip chip cheerio, maybe then that would make sense that the tariffs would be what would get rid of our debt. But we live in 2021. Oh, you live in 2025, and these tariffs are not going to produce enough revenue in order to substantially reduce our debt compared to the amount of lost income that's going to be flowing through the economy and affecting all other sources of revenue making, like sales taxes, consumer activity, investor confidence, keeping the goddamn bond. Again, I'm going to keep talking about the yields, keeping the yields low, keeping the interest rates low. The negative effects it has in the rest of the economy easily overwhelms the minuscule amount of money it's actually going to be taking in for the federal government on this one of the largest taxes
it's
on the
not
American
just
public
that
in
though.
history implemented by Mr. Business.
Well, it won't be a tax on the American public if American companies start producing here. Let me give you
I
another
mean,
example of how these
it is
tariffs
a
are
tax
different.
on the American public if they're the ones who have to pay for it. They're paying higher prices for bananas because of the 10% tariff that was placed on
Oh
the
no,
country.
not the
Where we,
bananas. Like, I mean,
what
like,
do
you
you
gotta be
mean?
kidding
Not
me
the,
here.
oh no,
Oh Lordy,
groceries.
Lordy, man. Oh
Wait,
Lordy, eggs are high. Let's just kill 30,000, however million chickens because of the bird flu that's like not even down here.
Gibbs, what are
Like,
you
come on, man.
talking
Like, that's
about?
what you sound like.
You're
I mean,
speaking gibberish right now. I said
I'm not
banana
speaking
prices
gibberish.
are
You're speaking
high,
gibberish. I know
which is a
you're talking about
common, it
banana.
is a
Who
common
gives a shit about
staple
banana prices?
household. Who
We
cares
can.
about banana prices? Banana
I'll
prices
tell you
are,
why. We
I'm
can
using a
literally
common
listen.
staple household food item.
Listen.
Oh, who cares about that? Who cares
This
about
is
that?
the equivalent of what you're doing. You're
I care
literally
about a
walking
man
into the
looking
night
like
and
Vince
screaming "read."
McMahon.
You're
Oh,
going.
that's serious politics.
No, you're literally walking out outside and reaching
Okay,
up with
egg
fistball, going, "Ah."
prices, banana
That's what you're doing right
prices,
now.
all these different prices of different fruits and vegetables. Like none of this matters. It's all like, oh, who
Well, I mean,
cares?
let's tell you what
10%.
matters.
Like, who cares if grocery
Let's talk
prices
about prices
increase?
for highest target
Well,
consumer.
wait, no, wait, no,
Do you believe
please,
shipping costs?
can you just justify to me?
I will.
No, you didn't
I
let me.
will. If you give
Yeah,
me a chance
I
to. Yeah,
didn't finish my question. How can you say you're
okay,
gonna
go
will
ahead.
when you don't know what the question is?
Sure. All right, go
How
ahead.
can you please justify to me such a strange bananas are a staple household food. Like this is something most Americans buy and put in their grocery cart. Saying, "Oh, the banana prices are higher." The reason I use banana prices is I'm using a staple food that everybody buys. We could talk about egg prices, which Vance talked about on the campaign trail, and then the prices went up. And now because of bird flu, we don't need to talk about it anymore. Now it's an uncomfortable issue. Now that egg prices that way, it's uncomfortable. But look, my problem is when these prices go up, before during Trump, it was during Biden, it was a crisis. It was a price crisis because he didn't care. And you know, your family is going to pay higher
What are banana
prices. Let me
prices?
finish. You're going to pay higher prices. Your family at home is going to pay these higher egg prices. You're going to pay higher banana prices. You're going to pay higher this price. They're going to pay higher prices. The interest rates are higher. Oh, fuck you, Joe Biden. You're destroying this country. Then Trump gets in there. Prices go even higher. And what, 10%? 10%.
Mm.
Who cares about 10% on bananas? Who cares about bananas? I don't like that type of politics. Either you
What's
don't like the
10%?
prices going up or you don't like the prices going up.
What's 10% of 28 cents?
10% of 28 cents is going to be a few cents, like 2 cents.
Yeah, 2 cents. So we're talking about a 2 cent increase on bananas. So a bushel of bananas right now at Walmart is literally I don't know, 28 cents per one banana and 2.26 for a bushel, right? Like a bunch. Right, I don't think that $2.26 bananas is going to bankrupt the American economy. You know what I think is going to bankrupt the American economy? When we have unfair trade deals, like I don't know, the Panama Canal, which we had people die to build, which we built, and basically Jimmy Carter tradeously gave away, and they're going to charge us between 300, 500,000 per ship when we break up 63% of their shipping, and like I don't know, something like 80% of their revenue, some crazy number, and their whole country is supported by this one canal, basically, and then a small fraction of tourism. And you're going to go, hey, bananas, though, whenever these guys are just taking us, and this is our butthole, and they're metaphorically reaming us on prices with shipping, that is shipping costs are passed on to American consumers. It's crazy to me that you're going to have the audacity to sit here and try to go banana prices. Oh, they're so
No,
terrible.
these
Black
two
America,
things
like,
have
they are
nothing
directly
to do
related.
with each other.
They're direct. Oh, they,
This
nothing.
is a
You don't think
complete pivot, man.
shipping? Hold on, it's not a pivot at all. I mean, okay, let's break down some economics.
Okay, I'll let you finish your rant, and
Just
then
one-
we'll.
it's not a rant. It's basic economics 101. I don't know if you know this, but logistical costs are a major factor whenever you pass prices on to consumers. And if it costs me millions of dollars to ship giant tons of items, oh, guess what? That means it's going to be more expensive for the consumer. Oh, and if we're getting fucked by the biggest trade route in the world on prices going through it on something we built, those prices are going to be higher going to the consumer.
Gibbs,
Whenever we go
I can't take this
and
seriously.
they lower the prices. Well, I mean, you can't.
The reason, no. Let me tell you why.
I don't know how you can't.
Well, if you be quiet for a second, I'll tell you. The reason I won't is, let's say we go through this. Let's say we negotiate a deal where it's American ships will be paid to go through the Panama Canal. Okay, they'll salute them. They'll say every American sailor has a right to our clay forever because your soldiers died from mosquitoes. So you guys have a right to our land forever. I guess that's just how the world works. And however many young men we have to sacrifice in those forests, again, getting blown up by car bombs, we can, whatever, however Trump has to want to go about it.
Mm.
And then when it's always going to manifest, it's going to be like, wow, price for bananas now, it's now from 26 cents to 25 cents. And then I can come to you and say, it's just a penny. It's just a penny, Gibbs. Who cares about a penny? When politics becomes that, like, oh, it's just 2 cents. It's just 2 cents. You know why, Gibbs? Because you're a rancher who has a lot of money. But 2 cents for somebody who has to buy bananas every week. And it's not just bananas, but then it's olives. And then it's blueberries. And then it's strawberries. And then it's celery. And then it's carrots. And then it's all these items. Those little bits of 10%, 50%, they add up for people. $20, $30, $40, $50 at the end of your grocery bill. For people who are surviving paycheck to paycheck, that actually matters.
I grew up eating government cheese, bro. I fucking had ice for dinner and sleep for dinner many times. Like, we grew up broke as shit.
Okay,
and we
so
made
then you have no excuse.
So
then.
I get it.
You have
but
no
no, I
excuse.
do exactly. So no. I have no excuse. And the reason, you're right, because I don't go in there and I see, oh, it went up 1 penny. Whenever we've been having inflation go up our entire life, and go, oh yeah, it's because of whatever. In fact, I would probably say the opposite. Like, man, it'd be nice if a president put up some tariffs and got some good trade deals, so other shit will go down.
What do we get for the? Well, okay, what do we get for the 10% tariff on bananas? What do we get from that? What do we, or for example, Vietnam? What are we getting from Vietnam, a nation state that is not going to buy our goods because they're too poor?
So if we put tariffs on China, what country's right next to China? Vietnam. Do they have a big trading partner with Vietnam? Well, they don't like each other, sure, but they do trade with each other quite a bit. Are they going to be like, hey, You know what we can do? We can just repackage everything in Vietnam and ship it to the US. Oh, well, absolutely. Because that's what China does all the fucking time already. So, like, when you're going to sit here and go, like, it can't be one set of rules for America
What are
and
you
then one
talking
set of
about?
rules for China. Well, okay, cool. Well, I can't believe you don't know this. This is
No, no,
crazy.
no, no. Wait.
China,
Vietnam.
China,
So we placed these 90% tariffs on Vietnam because of repackaging of Chinese goods in Vietnam. That's why we did that.
yeah, it hurts China,
That's
does it
not
not?
that's not what they said. Well, the reason the Trump administration said they placed a 90% tariff on Vietnam was because they had a 90% tariff on us.
Well, good for that. I mean, I guess they could justify it however they want to justify it. I mean, I would have justified it as they're going to ship Chinese goods, and China's going to ship through them.
So
And you're acting like they don't do that
so wait,
when
wait.
they've
What
done
I
that for
didn't say,
decades.
I
Like,
didn't wait. You're saying I'm acting like they don't do that, Gibbs. You're yelling in a way where I hear every other word, right? It's there's like a
so
the
sure.
I know that
You,
Chinese good pass through Vietnamese ports. They're massive trading partners. Vietnam is next to one of the largest economies in the world. It's impossible for you to be neighbors with China and not pulled into their economic circle. Taiwan, one of Taiwan's major trading partners, one of its biggest, actually, I think its biggest trading partner is China, even though it's China threatening them just because of their economic weight. So
sure.
we're going to place 90% tariffs on Vietnam to make them stop trading with China or to make them stop facilitating the trade of Chinese goods? Is that our goal? Because if that's our goal, it's
Maybe.
never gonna work. Of course,
Am I?
Vietnam has to exist with China. They're neighbors. How are we going to go to Vietnam and say, hey, you know, this country we have
How do
2,000
you
years of
know?
history with, you need to ignore them because our $100
Chinese
billion worth of trade with the United States is going
Chinese
to be
economy is
so
based
worth
on the
it.
U.S.
It's not going
The
to
Chinese
work.
economy is based. The Chinese economy is based so much on the U.S. right now.
It's
If we
based,
hit them hard in
it's
the
not
mouth,
just based on the
not
United
their economy
States.
crash. No, but the majority of it is. What percentage of their market is the U.S.? Do you know?
So you,
It's a massive,
I know
substantial
it's a
market.
massive
If their economy
portion of their
and if
market.
they crash, that's beneficial for us. I mean, sometimes, like I said, the pain now is better than the pain
If
later.
China
Like,
crashes, it
I
will
don't
be
want
a
to roll over
disaster
and let
for
China run the
everyone.
world. Do you?
It will be a disaster for everyone, including the American consumer. There will be a global recession when China goes down. The question is, how much could we shield the American people if that global recession is to take place to stop them from dealing with the worst parts of a
Like,
global depression?
what do you want done about China? Are you fan of China?
I'm not a
I'm look.
What the? Okay. I thought we were
Because
designing. Wait. I thought we were designing economic policy for the benefit of the American people. Are we now
we
picking
are.
fights with
We are.
Vietnam in order to collapse China to get regime change? Is that
You
what we're
think that's not
doing?
economic policy? Like, hold on. Do you think when we took out Gaddafi, who was trying to make a one currency of Africa, you don't think that affected economic
I don't
stability in the
think
region?
I. Wait, you believe that?
I mean, I'm just saying, like, we
Wait,
took out
no.
Gaddafi.
You
That's one of the things he
did
was
you fall
doing.
for the thing that like scrolls on Twitter all the time, like Hillary Clinton assassinated Gaddafi because he was going to make the United
That's
States
not why I'm
of
saying they
Africa
did it.
currency? Well, it's if you,
No, they're two unrelated things. He
I see
happened to
that
be doing.
stuff all the time. Okay, I
Oh
don't.
yeah, they say that all the time. No, that's not what I'm saying. No, what I'm saying is he was trying to do that, right? We took him
Uh
out
huh.
for whatever reason. I'm not saying it's a conspiracy. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that by taking out a leader like Gaddafi, who was in a wealthy position at the time, you are going to affect the economic region, are you not?
What does this have to do with anything I said?
So if we well, okay, well, because one, you try to paint that as a conspiracy theory. I'm not arguing that it was you
Wait,
for that.
no,
I'm just saying
Number
when
one,
we reduced Saddam,
it
there's an
has
economic
nothing. It has
change in
nothing to
Iraq.
do
Yeah,
because it was
absolutely.
never going to
Cool.
do
Well,
it.
same
I'm
thing.
sorry. Okay, Gibbs.
Same,
Gibbs, I'm going
same
to be
thing with
blunt with you.
China.
I'm going to be blunt with you. The United States would treat Gaddafi talking about bringing the moon and making it collapse into the United States with a giant magnet as seriously as Gaddafi making a United States of Africa or United States of Africa currency. And the reason why is most of Africa hated Gaddafi. All of his neighbors hated him. Most of the South hated him. So how is a guy who's hated by the entirety of the continent
You're focusing
somehow
too much
going
on
to unite it
the
economically
coin
or
thing.
in one unit? It was never going to work.
You're missing the point that I'm making here. Is okay. I'll give you a different example if you want that. Do you remember when
But no, you said I treated it
Libya
like a
and
conspiracy. That's why I treated it like we did
it
not
is a
take him
conspiracy.
out.
You are
We did not
cheating.
take him out for
Okay,
that. We didn't.
easy. Okay. Well, we took him out for a variety. That's I know that's
A
not why I didn't
variety
say
of
that's
reasons. It
why.
didn't have anything to do with it. It had
That's not why.
nothing. It
Hold on.
had literally
Hold on.
nothing to do
You're
with it.
scalping. You're not. Okay. Let's just focus on what I did say here. He's trying to do all these things economically in the region. Yes or no? Whether or not they're going to concede is
He's
a whole
trying
different
to
question.
do things in the region. Yes.
Okay, cool. So when you take out somebody who's got wealthy money, right? He's a successful country relatively in the region. If you take out their leadership and they devolve into a civil war, is that going to affect the region economically? Yes or no?
Yes.
Well, then that's my whole fucking point. And I don't know what all this other tangent was. Same thing when we took out Saddam. The region changed economically. Guess what? Like when we go and do stuff with
For
other
the
countries,
better
it's
or
the
the
same thing.
worse?
I mean, it could be best for us. It could be worse for other places.
How does a Chinese collapse benefit the American? Not America, like Americans, you and me.
I mean, do you think that in the long term, China is not an adversary? Like it would be better for our kids, our grandkids. It's something people think about us for China to keep going down this path where they can play by one set of rules and we can't.
So this is about like strategic battle. This is no longer about the economy. This is about a
It's
Cold War with
absolutely about the
China.
you can't separate these two things when they're so
But
intricately
none of
tied
this has to
the
do with
world
helping
economy.
because
It's a global.
I'm trying to measure Trump's economy based upon helping the average American. And so when I'm talking about making trade policy with the world, I want to give Americans low prices, good jobs, and a decent living, right? But if we're saying like, okay, so how do we design our trade policy with Vietnam? Well, we need to design it in a way that, China could collapse and then China, that we're in fantasy land. We're in fantasy
No,
land. What happens if we do all this? We pull every financial lever we have on the Chinese and they're still standing. Then you want to know what the big benefit of this is? Poorer Americans, higher prices, more inflation, higher interest rates, and a fucking recession. And we got it for what? This crusade?
I mean, listen, and if we let China just keep gaining power and keep taking advantage of us, eventually that's also going to happen. Except now we're not going to have the superpower status to be able to handle them.
Trump's
You got to
fine.
do something now.
You guys are
Like,
they're fine. The parties were fine with it when it's the Russians. Why is it a problem when it's the Chinese?
Listen, Russia is a shell of what they used to be, right? Like I'm sorry, like they're not the threat that China is. Like that, like yes, they're bad.
Look,
I'm not going to say they're not bad.
So
Like I'm not one of those Republicans. I don't like Russia either. Like
to be clear,
but
with
it's
is
not
the
like
strategy
Russia
really is the strategy really to do economic warfare with China until one of us go down?
Well, let me ask you a question. This is a pure hypothetical. I just kind of want to gauge your action. Say these Trump tariffs or Trump policies absolutely crushed Russia's economy. They had to stop the war.
Yeah.
Would you be a fan of that? Yes or no?
I would be a fan of the war ending, of course.
But you wouldn't like the economic ramifications, but you would be happy it ended the war. So it's kind of like a mixed bag thing.
Let me put it this way. The recent tariffs that were put in place had a bunch of effects on the world economy, and one of them was that oil prices went down. They were near $70 a barrel and went down to like $50 a barrel. This is something which probably means, or like 60 something dollars a barrel, which means the Russians, because they have to sell them at a discount, are selling them probably at about $50 a barrel, right? Now, that is already pushing the Russian economy to the brink because they have a budgeted for $70 a barrel. They don't have one budgeted for $50 a barrel, meaning they're going to have to take on debt. Now, if we have an Asia-style financial crisis from the 90s and we bring down oil prices to $10 a barrel, then that's something that could bring down the Russian economy maybe, or at least make them their gears start grinding and they start seeing the system can't take it. Now, I don't think that this is purposeful design to bring down the oil prices in this way. It's hard to say. This is the problem with Trump is anytime if he flails around and he slaps somebody, is it that he meant to slap them, or is it this is one of the side effects of his tariff war and trying to get this manufacturing McKinley style independence that he talks so much about? And so I'd be happy if the Russians, couldn't carry on the war due to low oil prices. But I don't know if that was the intention of the tariff policy. And Trump hasn't said anything to that detail. None of his advisors have said anything to that detail. I've seen some people talk about it as a possibility down the road, but I haven't seen anything to indicate that they've taken that pathway.
I mean, there's a famous quote. I don't know if you've ever heard it, but you kind of mentioned flailing. Do we give credit? I almost want to say it doesn't matter because of this quote. It's not stupid if it works, and like I feel if it's accomplishing these goals,
it could still be stupid. I mean, wait, okay. If I drink drive and I go home and I get there. I might have taken a few light posts on the way there. I accomplished my goal. I just did it in a stupid manner. Could have been more effective ways to do it. For example, I think we could have worked to bring down international oil prices without straining and hurting our trade relationships with countries like Vietnam for tariffs that aren't real.
But you're missing the whole point. You're missing the whole point. All right, this is why I said when at the very beginning, right? And I think you even agreed is Trump has came out and he has pushed very many things, a lot of them, right, fast, because he's trying to fulfill campaign promises, whether or not he's accomplished all of the whole area. But part of that is a large part of his constituency wants an America First agenda because they're sick of what they see as a globalist agenda that's been fucking over American manufacturing, American ag, American mom and pops. And so they want to compete in an equal playing field. And so when he goes and puts these tariffs, it does twofold. And you go, oh, I don't know if it means something. But when it seems like it's doing twofold, it's forcing Russia to the negotiation table. It's causing harm to the Chinese economy, which is causing and China is already openly admitting they're trying to sell directly to American consumers because they're like, oh, we can't even do business with these. It's devastating them. It's hurting them bad. And they're an adversary. This is the goal Trump has said first off. What does he always mean? China. That's what he's always wanted to go after. And he's doing it. He's everything he said he was going to do. He's either done, border, stop, foreign trade problems. He's going after it. He's got, I see bloat in the government. Doge going after it. He sees corruption with USAID. Okay, we're going to go after that. Like, these are all the things.
He didn't find any corruption in USAID.
Sure, well, like whatever. Listen, the point is people wanted to gut it with his. Well, okay. The point I'm making is
those are my friends' jobs. You can't just say it's all corrupt and then I say no, and you're like, okay, like those are people's jobs, man.
They are people's jobs, and people didn't give a shit. Remember when Biden said they'll find other jobs? What was it for all the?
What do you mean people don't give a shit? I live. My grandfather was a federal worker. My grandmother was a federal worker. They raised me. I'm surrounded by federal workers. I live in the county that has the most federal workers per capita of basically, I think of like basically the whole state. I think, but I don't know if it's specifically that. The point is, there's a lot of federal workers in my county. I'm surrounded by federal workers. When these people lose their jobs, they care about losing their jobs. Many of these people have given up careers that would be more profitable in the private industry to benefit their nation through civil service. And they've taken decades and decades of experience, used it to benefit the United States, and now we're trashing it and discarding it unconstitutionally around the power of purse of Congress. So not only are these people losing their jobs, but they're taking away their jobs in an un-American, unconstitutional fashion that ignores the votes of the American people. And you can play the little violin, but that just means to me that you don't care. It's a joke to you, and you don't care about the Constitution. You don't. It's a joke. Fuck the Constitution. Congress doesn't matter. You want a king. It's screw these federal workers. You don't matter. All these people who serve us. Fine. When you don't have good federal workers protecting you and your family at night, and it's instead, just somebody who doesn't care, just scrolling through like terrorist profiles. Okay. But then our country's gonna have to deal with the effects of it. We see it with plane crashes. We see it with other public services.
Where was this indignant outrage when Biden told oil workers they could just get new jobs where they live? Where was this? Where was this indignant outrage?
Wait, one second. Wait.
Hold on.
Do you want an answer? I have an answer. I had it. I had it. Okay. I talked about. Don't ask a question if you don't like the answer. I didn't do it with oil workers. I did it with coal workers because I know a lot of family in West Virginia. I have a lot of family in West Virginia. Now, it's not as simple as telling people start coding. But I also don't like the false answer of let's prop up a dying industry forever and give people false hope. I don't like either of these things. It's one thing to say like the simple as starting coding. There's a culture that's been built around this, a working class blue collar culture that you can't just get them all onto the computer in the way that, the people who are designing these policies are used to. Because that's
coding pay as much. Does coding pay as much as oil field work generally?
I don't know if it pays as much as oil work. I'm talking about coal work. I'm talking about what I'm familiar with and what I referenced, right? I don't have friends in coal. I have friends in coal. I don't have friends in oil. Okay. So I'm talking about what I know.
I have people making over $100K a year to suddenly they're being told to make a $40K a year job, and they have a family and they've had an established lifestyle, and Biden told them to get fucked. No indignant outrage. Fine. What about
to be clear, you're telling them to get fucked. You as an individual are saying fuck those people. That's what you just did to me. I'm not Biden. Yeah, I'm DylanBurnsLIVE if you don't know my name, okay?
I get that.
Admiral Gibbs.
But you're missing
my
point.
Saying fuck them. So Admiral Gibbs, fuck you.
It's
fuck you,
it's not fuck I get it. That's fine. That's fine. Listen, it is fucked up, and I'll tell you why it's fucked up. Because whenever we brought up all these problems on the right, we brought these problems up for years. When I brought up my ranch getting destroyed and my cattle being killed by all these people, y'all said, "Oh, poo-poo, wealthy landowner."
I'm me, man.
Sure. I get that, Dylan. I get that. Just calm down for a second.
No,
I get it.
I
But
don't.
whenever
I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it. Y'all. No, no,
but
no.
people on
You're
the left,
talking to
people
me.
on the left.
People on the left.
Okay, Dylan.
We're
So
talking about real
where were you?
people,
Fine.
and this is
Well,
all a
when
team
I
sport for you. This is like watching
no,
football to
it's
you.
not a team sport.
It's like,
It's
hey,
not a
there
team
was
sport.
this guy that was
I
mean for
have
me,
to
so I'm going to be
blame.
mean to his
I have
family,
to
and I'm going to
blame.
say screw his
I
family and his
have
kids
to
and don't
blame.
have food on the table.
Listen,
It's all you
I
treat it like
literally
a team
came on.
sport.
I literally started going on panels for the sole reason to tell people about the problems we were having down here with immigration. I had friends die this month from cartel violence. Two of them, two girls. One of them was raped and killed in her home by cartel members. One of them was by the Zetas, right? Like, okay, this is a real problem down here. And I
Hey,
came
Gibbs,
on.
if I took out a
literally
little violin and went like this right now, how would that make you
Sure,
feel?
that's fine. I'd be okay with it. I'd be like, cool, I get it because it's pertinent to my point. The point is that these things happen, right? And when I brought them up, and many others brought them up, many people, not you specifically, on the left didn't care at all. No one cared. And they said poo-poo wealthy landowners or poo-poo oil field guys. They're bad environment jobs. We don't care. Nobody cared. And so when I turn around and see Biden and going, oh, all these things, saying all these things, and I see people on the left supporting him, and I turn around and go, oh, remember when BLM happened and all these business owners, $20 billion damage caused to local businesses? People said, oh, well, for the protests, nobody cares about those people. People got mad. And so then when Trump got elected, and he's going, okay, there's bloat in the government, which everybody knows. I've never heard anybody ever argue about there's bloat in the government. And he starts gutting these jobs. Yeah, it's sad. People lost their livelihoods. I'll admit that. But don't sit here and try to give me a woe is me, I'm so sad story when nobody gave a shit about any of us for the past, I don't know, 20 fucking years, Republican or Dem. And when we finally see somebody doing something for us and we go, oh, some people got, sucked into a bad time and got fired. Oh, well, sorry. It happens. Thus is life. Deal with it. Just like you told us. Don't sit here and try to make me feel bad for him, because I don't.
You're making Americans your enemy. That's what you're doing by taking this type of political
Americans your enemy.
No, you said you. You didn't say the left. You said you, Gibbs. Justify it. You said you. When did I make Americans my enemy?
Because you're supporting policies. You're supporting policies that cause people lose their jobs on the right.
Oh,
you support policies that
what policy? What policy did I support?
What is your immigration policy?
What's my immigration position?
Do you like the wall? Do you like the wall? You want to deport all illegals?
Do I want to deport every undocumented person? No, I don't.
Yeah. Okay. Do you like the wall?
Do I like the wall? I don't. I'm ambivalent about the wall.
Okay, so when you say you're ambivalent about the wall,
I'm ambivalent about the wall because the wall. When we talked about the wall, the way Trump described it was a wall from one end of the United States to the other end of the United States. That's not going to be effective border patrol. You need people. You need patrols. You need drones. A bunch of other stuff besides a wall, which you need It's not the wall. To me, was more of a symbol. It's not. The wall itself doesn't really fucking matter.
To me, it's a literal wall. Whether that's a actual fucking Great Wall of Texas, or if it's drones flying along, or it's a secure area.
I don't think a fence is going to fix our immigration problem.
Yeah, but it's not just the immigration. It's the property damage. It's the property damage. It's the loss of livelihood. It's the loss of life. And y'all are sitting here going, oh, whatever. It's sex trafficking. Y'all don't care about these women.
What do you mean, whatever? I never said whatever to any. Who are you
just said you're ambivalent. You just said you're
ambivalent to the wall, not immigration.
I understand that, but the wall does solve a great majority of these issues that are.
Solve it, man. Okay, for example, let me just say this. The majority of people in the United States, we're talking about visa overstays. For people who are crossings, there's been ladders. There's people who have cut through the fencing. There's people who have dug under the fencing. There's people who have taken boats and gone through waters. And when we talk about human immigration, there isn't even a wall to speak of. You're talking about people who are getting on buoys and coming over from Cuba. My point is the wall itself, I'm ambivalent to. A drone and patrols across the open desert where people are going to be dying of dehydration anyway, that is going to be much more effective than a wall of a physical wall. You asked me how I feel about it. I'm saying you don't care about a certain amount of the American public. You don't care about, you're fighting with the Americans. I'm saying, wait, let me finish. And your response is, well, how do you feel about the wall? Well, the wall specifically, I'm ambivalent to. I more care about this specific, that specific. You're like, how dare you not care about the symbol of our proud MAGA movement? Okay, I'm sorry.
That's not the symbol. That's not the point with the wall.
You're crying over this wall.
You're just obfuscating what I'm saying right here.
This holy wall. Okay, this isn't like the wall in Israel, right? It's a separate wall. It doesn't have religious implications.
Nobody's
It's
literally
not-
saying a physical wall. Maybe Trump said that once, but nobody who's any right mind is talking about a physical
That's not
only
what
a wall.
Trump
We're talking
supporters
about
said in
Sure,
2015, by the way.
sure.
That
We're
was
talking about
literally his
whatever,
campaign.
we're talking about whatever secures the border.
So
That's
all
what we're
that
saying.
he
And
that,
when
he'll,
you
pay- that
hold
Mexico
on,
will pay
when
for,
you're
of course, right?
hold on, cool. And when you're saying, oh, you're ambivalent to this, and I'm going, oh, people
I'm
died
ambivalent
that I
to
know.
the wall.
Sure.
And then I
I
gave
get
you
it. I get it.
details, and you get
But
angry anyway.
I get it. Hold on. Well, this, and I'll give you details here. And when people died directly because cartels had easy access through its unsecure borders, and these people came here illegal and killed people, and you go, oh, well, I'm ambivalent to the wall. I'm ambivalent to the secure border. We're only talking about visas.
You
That
asked
is
me
saying
about the
you don't care about
wall.
Americans. I understand that. And my point is this: when I make this comment, and you say you're ambivalent, just like I don't care about these people lost their jobs, just like you don't care about these girls that got raped and killed this week. And I'm not saying you're a bad person. I'm not. I'm just
That
saying
would
it's
make me a
all
horrible
team sport.
person. That would make me a terrible
Listen,
person.
I mean, listen. I'm sure you do
You
on
just
some
said
level
you just
care,
said I
right?
don't care about girls that were
Yeah, but
raped
you
and
don't care.
killed
But
this
you're
week.
not gonna change the policy, are you? You're not gonna advocate for
I
the
want to
secure
arrest
border
people
that's
who
gonna
are
stop
raping and
this.
killing children.
Sure,
And guess
but do you
what?
want to
The
stop them
majority
from
of them
getting
are
here?
people who are born here. The
Sure,
undocumented
sure.
immigrants
But
have
if
a
one
lower violent
American
crime rate than the
dies to a
people
legal
born
person,
here. So it's not.
well, that's
For
actually
me,
coming out to
we're
be a
talking
debatable
about.
now.
That's being debatable
There's
now.
new there's
New
new evidence
evidence
to support. There's new evidence to support based on some polling. I don't have it right in front of me. I could get it to you
based
later
on
this week if you want it.
polling. What do you mean
Not
polling?
polling, not polling. Based off the way that they've documented some of these cases, whether or not these are people that are actually immigrants or whatever, or how they're documented. There's a big thing coming out right now.
There's a
I can
big
find it
thing
for you later.
coming out. Okay. Well, I'll
Yeah,
wait for the
it's
big
debate.
thing.
I'll send it to you. Don't worry. And you can. I'm sure you could yell about it. It'll be real mad
But
about
dude,
how it's
my problem here
doing
is look,
facts.
of course I don't want anybody to get raped and killed, but like my problem here is I'm talking about people losing their jobs, and we're also talking about the process in which people are losing their jobs. And the response you had was
I'm talking about
for
people
example,
dying.
what like when you bring up a person getting raped and killed, I'm not gonna go at the little violin. Maybe it's something I don't know about. Maybe it's something you don't know about because you're not from the federal worker community. You know, you work on a ranch. You're not a Fed. You're not one of those people.
Yeah, but I mean,
So
but y'all didn't care about the oil workers either. Y'all said go find jobs coding, and I'm like, you're gonna go from a 120K a year
no.
job to a 40 or 50K a year job, and,
Gibbs,
like
can
this is what I'm
if
saying.
you
People on
ever
the
want to talk
left,
to me again, Gibbs, if you ever want to talk to me again, talk to me.
sure, okay, fine. Like, are you arguing that you didn't advocate for policies that got American oil workers fired? Is that what you're honestly telling me?
What do you mean? What policies did I advocate for?
I mean, you advocated for Biden. Is that correct? Like, you liked Biden as your presidential candidate back in the day?
I voted for Joe Biden.
Burns. Is
Okay,
a
so
moral,
you
morally
voted for a
corrupt
person
bank
that implemented
man.
policy that got American oil workers fired, correct?
He also got other ones hired, but yeah.
So, okay, and which I see as the equivalent to me voting for Trump, who got American federal workers fired. Do you see an equivalency
Gibbs,
there?
my question isn't about whether, because if I can vote for Biden and disagree with a certain policy, you can vote for Trump and disagree with a certain policy, as you've told me in the past. Gibbs, let me
I've done
finish.
that, yeah.
But when I finish, the difference is I wouldn't go in there and be like, look at all these oil workers, their kids can't eat, which seems to be
No
the
one's doing
style of
that.
politics that, no, that's what you're doing. When you say, oh, when we talk about federal workers losing their job, by the way, illegally, by the way, the Constitution doesn't matter when it comes to this, but the power of the purse dictates that Congress makes these institutions, Congress destroys these institutions. It is not the president unilaterally getting the authority to destroy the CFPB, which returned $20 billion to American consumers. Over 200 million Americans have benefited from being returned money by the CFPB. That was destroyed unilaterally. That was contracted by Congress after the 2008 financial crisis to help people who were getting scammed by these institutions. Now it's dead, gutted by the richest man in the world, even though the power of the purse lies with Congress. These firings are done in the same manner. So it's not even just a question about the morality of firing these people, whether USAID has a role, whether the CFPB has a role, whether the U.S. Department of Education has a role, whether any of these things have a role. It's a question of he doesn't even have the right to do it.
Why is it unconstitutional? Because the way the Constitution
Congress, okay, the way the Constitution's set up. Tell me how Congress doesn't, if they create a department in government, how the president could just get rid of it.
Okay, so all right, you know about the Prime has brought this up before. That's the 1984 Internment Act. Is that the one the left keeps using? I feel like a lot, where they keep saying that Trump's violated this. And so basically, this is the legal theory that maybe you can tell me where I'm wrong with this. Say he guts USA. completely gone. Right. And the Congress has budgeted, I don't know, let's just for the sake of this argument, make it a nice round number, $1 million for USA, and he's got it. And he says, I don't want to spend it in USA. To me, there's no reason I couldn't see him going, well, as long as he puts some other people in USA and they spend $1 million, why wouldn't they why wouldn't that be fine? If he started using USA to send it to right-leaning NGOs, that'd be accomplishing the same goal, and the left would have a problem with that, though, right? Like, what if he started doing that? Would that be fine with you then? If he started spending all the money for, I don't know, Trump aid to go into the exact same thing, would that be fine with you?
If it performed the same circus, the same thing, like the same aid or the same whatever, sure, as long as it wasn't direct profiteering.
Yeah, as long as not direct profiteering, but it was starting instead of going to like left-leaning NGOs, started going to right-leaning NGOs.
I don't care.
With that? Okay, well then, yeah, I'll give you credit. You're probably
I care that there's children who are dying because they can't get the AIDS medicine that we were the ones giving them before. And the reason we stopped isn't because our country had a debate that we should stop sending them AIDS medicine, and it passed through Congress, and everybody's duly elected representative said, you know what? I'd rather these kids pass so we can, or I'd rather deal with the scenario where these kids might die because we need to save our budget. That's not what happened. What happened is the president went in there unilaterally and said, we're just gutting this. We're abandoning our staff in Africa. We're not getting them rides home. And we're shutting down the institutions.
Money like 4 years ago.
Wait, no. Stop. Before we can have this conversation. But this is not a question of should we be spending money in Africa. This is not that conversation, Gibbs. The conversation is who determines how we spend our money. It is Congress. It is Congress who determines how we spend our money. And it's not the president of the United States' unilateral job to choose how we spend our money.
Well, they just give the money to the whole program. The program, or not the program, the little thing. Just what is USA? The organization. There you go. I couldn't think of the word. I don't know what I was blanking. Decides how they spend it, right? And you just agreed with that, right?
Well, so Congress decides how they spend it.
No, Congress says it's for USA.
Congress, this is the reason why Congress has to be the one to decide this. When we make these budgets, it's not here's USA. You got $20 billion. Good luck. It's here's $20 billion. $1 billion is to be spent on this aid program, and this is supposed to be spent on hygienic gear. This is supposed to be spent on medical gear. This is supposed to be spent on XYZ. Now, what institutions you go to get those services, that could change. That could be determined by the leadership. But that's why it's Congress's job. That's Congress's job.
No, sure. They say it should go to these things. It should be spent generally for these things. They don't get down to the exact nitty gritty details.
They get pretty specific, but I mean, like,
but it's not like the coffee cup, right? Now, I'm not going to argue. Here's the thing, though. This is what Trump campaigned on: is that there's bloat. It needs to be gutted, right?
I don't care.
Go look at
why does that matter?
Okay, cool.
Because
so you don't care about that?
No,
you don't
why
care
should
what
I care about that? No, it's not. It's not. No. It's not a question about the American people think. It's a question of our system. The way if we change the rules of the system depending upon who's in power. Yes, there's fraud and waste in the government. That does not mean that, number one, U.S. aid has been proven to be 100% fraud and waste. And when you destroy an organization, well, yeah, but when you destroy an organization, like, unless he can prove it was 100% fraud and waste, it was literally a fake organization created by Congress just to grift, then you don't have the right to just get rid of the organization without Congress.
It's not a grift.
Or like, for example, the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, that's for American people. That's not for Africa or China or wherever. That's 20 billion people, $20 billion back in the pockets of Americans. Whether it's controversial doesn't matter. That was created by Congress. It is Congress's job to get rid of it. Why is this so hard for people who have supposedly read the Constitution front to back to understand that's the process? That's Article 1, baby. That's the first job.
I mean, and so if he runs on getting rid of these things and then he gets elected and he starts getting rid of these,
it doesn't matter if he ran on if Biden ran on putting every single conservative in a big old jail because they're let me finish.
But he's been winning.
If Biden won, that doesn't mean he has the right to do it. And even if, and plus, Trump didn't say, I'm going to get rid of the CFPB without Congress. Trump said he's going to get rid of fraud and waste. Now, when you hear fraud and waste, oh, people stealing. Oh, wasteful spending. Oh, they don't think, oh, the CFPB, which Americans are actually divided on and Congress is divided on. That's what they heard on the campaign trail. So even if we could say it was all fraud or waste, I disagree with that assertion. But even if we were to agree to it, it still has to go through Congress. This is all being done unconstitutionally. Why does the Constitution only matter when it protects your side?
First of all, it doesn't. But second of all, this it's debatable whether it's unconstitutional. It's in the
It's not
courts. The Supreme
debatable.
Court
It's not debatable.
gives the
Whether
rule.
it's in the court doesn't
Why are
make
the
it a
Supreme?
debate.
Wait. So if the Supreme Court rules a certain way, it sure means that they're Constitution experts. That's why they're in the Supreme
So
Court.
you're saying
If they
that
all rule,
what authority does Congress have then if they don't have spending authority?
because there's all sorts of authority. They
Well,
make
the
the
thing is,
laws,
well,
bro.
no,
What
this
are
is
you
the
talking about?
problem. Okay, but you need money
The
to
Supreme
enforce.
Court's literal only job is to interpret the
The
Constitution. So if
the
the
problem
Supreme
is
Court
though,
says it's
if you don't
constitutional,
control the money, you have no power. If you want to, for example, declare war, but then you cannot gather the funds to war. For example, let's say Congress voted to go to war. Let me just run this scenario out as to why this is important for Congress to have this authority. Congress votes to go to war, right? We go to war with Canada because Canada bombed a church. Doesn't really matter the specifics. Bombed a church. We're angry about it. Congress votes 100-0. We're going to war, right? We're assuming that we lost a bunch of people along the way. The bombing was very brutal. We lost a lot of representatives. Okay.
yeah, we're going to war with Canada. That's fine.
Okay. Whatever.
Go ahead. I
Okay.
got
Okay.
you.
You're going to war in the Senate. After the vote is done, we need to raise a budget to go to war because we need money to bomb things, right? Okay. President doesn't like the idea of going to war. President is friends with Mark Carney, the Prime Minister of Canada. President's friend with whoever. He doesn't want to do it. President's the one who controls the budget. They dictate that here's the funds we need to give towards the war. Presidents say it's all waste, fraud, and abuse, wasteful spending. We don't need to go to war. We have a big enough budgetary problem as it is. And the war isn't a good idea anyway. You're not going to get those funds. Then what? Then we declared war with what budget? With what means to implement war? With what means to implement what we had? That's why Congress needs the authority to control spending, to locate spending. That's not even talking about stopping the wastefulness and graft from the executive. Because if the executive can just choose where the money goes without Congress's hearsay, I would say, the chief executive has less, people checking them in Congress with how many people are involved in the congressional body. There's more opportunities to graft in that way, in my experience. At least that's how Yanukovych and other historic revolutionary grafters have done it.
Let's just use your own example. Okay. So we're about to go to war with Canada, and Trump doesn't want to go to war. So, okay, he decides they budget Congress has declared war and they budgeted it out, whatever, for the war. And Trump decides, okay, well, I don't want to go on war, so how can I stop this? Well, the way to do this, Mr. Commander-in-Chief, is that we're going to do what we call defensive war. And he decides he's going to spend all the money on the tanks that they want, all the money on the aircraft, and then, they need to build bases. Well, he's going to build entrenchments all along the border, but he doesn't send anybody actually in to Canada, but he sets up defenses all along the border, and, if they ever intrude, he fights them. But he doesn't go into them. Would you, say in that scenario that he's met the budgetary obligations and the war requirements that have been required of him?
It depends on what the Congress is. For example, if Congress said just defend America after the bombing, yes. But if America said we need to remove the government that did this, no. It depends on what. For example, this is my problem. America wants to? They say we're going to invade. We're going to do this. Trump, he controls the spending. So we're supposed to invade, but I spent it all on entrenchments. Oops, I spent it all on Trump's decided that that's how it's going to be spent. This is why Congress needs the authority.
So America and Congress is America.
I feel like this is 1776 right now. I feel like we've gone back to why should Congress have the authority? Well,
it's interesting that it's interesting you kept saying America wants this, because I also see what Trump's doing as what America wants. We voted for him, and he's going in there and doing what we want. You literally just said this. If America wants this,
you're playing word games, Gibbs. You're playing word games. You can't deal with the point, so you're playing word games.
Well, I'm dealing with the point. I'm going point by point. Listen, we've got a Congress majority in, right? We got
Congress
Trump,
says invade Canada. Trump just builds entrenchments. You just laid out how Trump could abuse it.
Sure, I laid it out, but you even admitted it depends on how they lay out how he has to do it. You said America wants, and I'm not playing word games, because here's my thing.
Why do you want to give the president so much power?
We voted right? We got Trump in office. We voted a Republican majority in. We'll see how that changes at midterms. It probably will. It always does. Then we have the Supreme Court, right? That's a Republican majority because guess what? We voted people in there that were going to get people in or hold up nominations. This is what we wanted as Republicans. So now Republicans are in power. They are the voice of America for now, for at least the next year and a half, right? So, okay. Now, we want changes. We want Trump to look at these agencies and gut them. And guess what he's doing? He's doing exactly what he told us he was going to do, which was go open up these agencies and gut them. And then you're going, well, I don't like this XYZ. When you just said in your own scenario, well, it's what Congress in America wants. Well, right now, Congress in America want him to do this. That's why he's got support. And it's the minority that got voted out that's sitting here crying into the night because they're sore losers. That's all that's happening. And you can't sit here and go, oh, I like the Constitution when I like it, and you don't, because that's what you're doing. Y'all are the ones doing the lawfare all the time.
Y'all. Gibbs, talk to me.
The left, bro. I mean, you're my representative of the left right now.
I'm my representative of me, Gibbs.
Sure, okay, fair. And I mean, I'm also a representative of me, but I represent the right here in this convo. I'm just saying that when you're saying these things and you go, America wants this in this scenario, we don't even have to look at that because the real world scenario is America voted for something and Trump is delivering on his campaign policy.
Okay, so number one, none of that was a constitutional justification. All of that was just he won an election, so he doesn't have to pay attention to the Constitution. So just to be clear, yes, it was, because the conversation we had, you laid out exactly how the President of the United States could ignore Congress's declaration of war and use budgetary movements in order to not invade. You laid out a scenario where he's been told to invade Canada.
We're still at war with we're still at war with North Korea. I know, we're still at war with North Korea. I laid out the North Korea scenario. Technically, we're still at war with North Korea.
You make me want to kill myself sometimes, Gibbs, with how much you talk.
I mean, you've been talking way more than me, to be totally honest. But I'm just saying, like, we're doing exactly the scenario described with North Korea. Do you have a problem with how we're handling North Korea?
Can I finish my sentence?
Yeah.
Okay, so my scenario was Canada bombs us, so we need to invade and deal with Canada. And then you ran out, okay, so Congress wants to go to war and invade, and the president then just spends all the money on entrenchments and everything necessary to defend America while never invading, never carrying out what Congress has asked him to do. What you laid out for me is the exact problem with not giving Congress the financial power that it was dictated in the Constitution. If you don't give it to them, then the president can take their actions duly voted for by the representatives, duly voted by the American public, and just ignore them and just take the budget meant for one thing and then derive it to a totally different thing, which isn't only avoiding what the people voted for, which their representatives matter in that too. When you say America chose this, America chose that, it isn't just America chose a president. America also chose a Congress. America also chose our system a very, very long time ago. It's also an incredibly easy way to graft the system if you allow the chief executive to choose where all the money goes without congressional oversight, which again is Article 1 powers of the Constitution, bare basics when we're talking about constitutional authority. And so, look,
I don't know how
you can say it's a,
no,
look, Gibbs, I need you to really think about this for a moment. What we're talking about now is an authority any president would love. Biden would love it. Harris would love it. Trump would love it. All of them would love it because it would give them an amount of power that they don't deserve. They don't, no one office deserves that much power to not only have veto authority and have so much power over a foreign policy and representing the United States, but then dominion over how the money is allocated as well, usurping Congress. That breaks our system. This is not a question of being a sore loser. In 4 years, if you have President Gavin Newsom, you don't want him taking all the money that was supposed to be for immigration and diverting it towards gender counseling for immigrants, do you?
Well, yeah, I don't want gender counseling for immigrants. That's terrible. That's a waste of fucking money. Just like I'll tell you another one that's even less controversial. But like, why the fuck are we spending $200K, which is a small number, studying a dead butcher's language in France? I don't want to study that. I don't want American taxpayer dollars going to shit like that. Like, I'm sorry, whenever you say this. Now, as for what you've been saying this whole time being unconstitutional, I've been over here doing a little research. Trump 6 hours ago said directly, and I quote, to follow all Supreme Court rulings going forward to make sure. So Trump is even saying, hey, listen, I'm not trying to shake the boat, but don't break the law. The Supreme Court says we can't do something. Don't do it, right? He's already saying that. He just said that 6 days ago. The Supreme Court ruled that he can fire agency heads and all sorts of other people.
Agency heads, not completely gut institutions without congressional oversight.
I mean, it's not even the oversight. It's not like you just don't like who the oversight is. That's the problem.
Wait.
Got oversight in there.
To destroy these institutions, you would need a 2/3 majority, which is why he's not going through Congress, because he knows he cannot get through CFPB or get through these different institutions, that he would not have the majorities to do so. So he's simply choosing to avoid Congress altogether, say we don't need to do that. We can just get rid of it through executive order, even though it's never worked that way.
No, it's just making he's just making them like basically inept and useless, which was what the people want, because we don't have the ability to just get rid of them outright. So he's doing exactly what his constituents asked.
Gibbs,
he's following the letter of the law.
You scare me, Gibbs. The reason you scare me, Gibbs, it's not just you that scares me. It's the whole right that scares me, because I was always of the thought that I was going to have to spend the rest of my days, when I was young and naive and first getting into politics, arguing with lefties about gun control and how it's unconstitutional to gun grab, and arguing with people about, hate speech is free speech, whether we like it or not. And I thought that was going to have to be my future of constitutionality. And every once in a while, I'd have to go over to the right and say, hey, birthright citizenship is still a thing. Yeah, you can't just ignore it. But now it seems like the Constitution, like in part for the whole system, how it's supposed to work functionally, as long as you win an election and you think the American people voted for the getting rid of waste, fraud, and abuse, which, by the way, they might be in favor of getting rid of waste, fraud, and abuse. Most Americans don't think the CFPB counts as waste, fraud, and abuse. Most Americans do not think that all of the government agencies that are being unconstitutionally gutted are just waste, fraud, and abuse, especially those who have worked there for decades trying to assist America, either building its civil society or working towards America's interests.
All right, let me ask you a question. Who is the arbiter of what is constitutional? Because you proclaimed the Supreme Court, right?
The Supreme Court.
So you're advocating that you want the system to work as the Constitution intends, and the Supreme Court is the final arbiter of whether it's constitutional. Yes?
Yes.
All right. So whenever I look at things and Trump says, and I quote, this is a direct quote, follow the Supreme Court rulings. Okay. That means follow the supreme arbiters of what is constitutional. That's what he's just directed his heads to do. And then I see the Supreme Court ruling in favor of him on several issues going forward on this. I feel like it's
going forward on what? Going forward on what? On what I was just saying?
People. Yeah, firing people.
No. Don't play word games. I said my problem is destroying constitutionally created organizations without oversight. That's my problem. Mine doesn't have to do with firing one guy or even firing a bunch of guys. Mine have to do with the fact that Congress said that this organization should exist, and President Trump said, I don't care.
Congress said that agency exists. The Constitution didn't say it, correct?
But the Constitution gives Congress the power to create.
Correct, right? And the Constitution also gives what? The Supreme Court the final say on what's constitutional, correct?
Yes.
All right, so Trump, follow on my logic, if Trump is saying follow Supreme Court rulings, and then he's following all the rulings when they come out of the cases, and the Supreme Court's ruling in his favor, then it seems to me like
other case, he got a 9-0 ruling against him in the recent Maryland father case.
Okay, and what? Okay, sure. Which one's that? That's the
case of the people that was the person that was deported in an administrative error.
El Salvador. Yeah, that one. That one I disagree with. He needs to bring that guy back. All right, but so that's fine. Like when we're sitting here and they follow these things, he's following them. As far as I know, we'll see how that one turns out. I hope they go and get him. If they don't,
right now Trump's trying to lose this guy in a prison. Like you see Trump like. I'm sorry to divert, but we've been focused. We had a bunch of other things on the issue, and I do want to make sure we get to other things. But on this Maryland father case quickly, like Trump is clearly just trying to pretend he can't do anything. The court they said he had to facilitate it. And so they say, oh, so we have to facilitate it domestically. No, they mean that the president of the United States should try to get this person that they illegally deported back. And so then they turn over to Bukele as the person who, took this guy in, and he pretends that he can't get the guy back either, even though this man is basically like a dictator. And that's not to say that he isn't popular, but he's like he's an authoritarian dictator that of course he could get him back. They're just choosing not to. And that's scary definitely when he starts talking about not only this happening to other people, but we're talking about like doing this to Americans now, deporting Americans to foreign prisons. And the White House press secretary saying they're legitimately looking into it. And it always starts with the bad guys. It always starts with the pedophiles and rapists and the murderers as the first one, so nobody stands out and defends them. And then when it's later, it's going to be the person who made the mean tweet. Maybe it'll be a little different.
Listen, I will be honest. I don't know that case as well as I would like to. I'll probably research it more later today. But I will say this: if the Supreme Court ruled 9-0 favor, which I believe they did, I absolutely stand by Michigan. I also like the idea of the U.S. government deporting people to other countries, American citizens to other countries, and I disavow that. And so don't do that. So yeah, I think that they should do something. I don't know what their current status is. It seems like they're dragging their feet for whatever reason.
What do you think about Trump saying facilitate just means domestically, that he actually doesn't have to do anything except bring him home domestic, which means do nothing because he's not here? Like that's dodging, right? That's purposefully, like he's doing everything possible not have to bring anyone back.
Well, I'll tell you my take on it. I don't know. I just seem like they're dragging their feet. That's what I'll say. The reason
rip the Band-Aid off. Just do it.
Yeah. Well, I think I think there's two things happening. One, there probably is some kind of logistical issue. I'm sure that could be worked out fairly easily. We're the goddamn United States. Two, I think there's. Maybe it's not the issue that the left is painting it as, where it's like he's just not empathetic or racist. I almost feel like heads are probably going to roll over this because he's like, now I tried to roll this thing out and you fucked me, and he's trying to maybe figure out who's going to roll on the lower end, who's the scapegoat. I don't know. I could be wrong. I wouldn't be surprised if it's that or maybe a combination of other things. But yeah, I'm not a huge fan.
Why do they keep lying about it at all? Why they keep for example, every time I see them talk about it, they say that this dude before they said he was MS-13, then they said, oops, it was an error. So that was like, oh, so he's not MS-13. Because we're going to bring him back. He's obviously not an active MS-13 gang. We're not going to, Trump wouldn't do that. That'd be stupid. And then all of a sudden, never mind, he is MS-13 again. At the last meeting he had with Bukele described him as an MS-13 terrorist. Trump described him as MS-13. Everybody else in his cabinet described him as MS-13. But his union president, his wife, all these other people are saying that there's no evidence of it. We have yet to see the Trump administration present evidence of it. Now, if this guy is MS-13, I would like to know it, but I have yet to see any evidence of it. Do you know anything about this, Gibbs?
It shouldn't matter if he's an American citizen that he should be.
Well, no, we're talking about the case of the person that was deported, the Maryland father that was deported, where the person whose case was open, and
Yeah, I'm doing a quick cursory reading of it, but regardless, this would be my argument. He's an American citizen, and that means that you get to stay here.
But isn't that scary though? Isn't it scary the idea of not only the deportation, but the oops, we lost, you can't do anything about it now? And that's what you're talking about, how much Trump's doing. He's doing it so fast. While on one hand, if you care about the priorities, I imagine seeing action taken feels good. It's okay, we're finally getting started. But these videos of these guys getting loaded on the planes, a lot of those people ended up being innocent. A lot of those people ended up being Venezuelan gay hairdressers, where they said a tattoo was this horrible gang tattoo, and it ended up just being a soccer tattoo, and they're being deported.
Yeah, but were they here illegally?
Whether or not they were here illegally, the question is, wait. It matters. What matters is whether or not they had due process and if their case has been properly reviewed, because the person from Venezuela was somebody seeking asylum after fleeing Venezuela as a dissident. And then trying to work in the United States as, a hairdresser and such like that. So this was not, but again, Trump said that these people being deported while wait, let me finish. Trump said on these first planes, and this made sense to pitch his agenda, that we're going after the criminals, we're going after the rapists, we're going after the murderers, and we're going to load them on the planes, and we're going to get them out of here, because we're going after the bad hombres, right? And then the people getting loaded on are not only not the bad hombres, but it's also the people who have open cases and have a right to due process and are being deported illegally and then lost in the system. It's the rush. It's the rush to get it done as he's being told to turn around the planes. He ignores the court order. That's the stuff that scares me. The ignoring of the court orders. For example, he says follow the Supreme Court. Well, in that case where the Supreme Court said facilitate his return, he said, okay, sure. Facilitate simply means do nothing.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, you're not going to catch me defending an American citizen getting deported to another country. That's not going to be something I will defend. I do understand your fears from that. I do understand. I mean, I'll give you this, right? It's like I'm a Texan.
And
I don't particularly
mhm.
like big government, right? Right? Like I've always been anti big government. Not a libertarian. We don't need to go there, but I'm not a huge fan of big government. And I'll give you an example. I'll give you a caveat, right? We brought Doge up a little bit ago. When Doge was implemented, I said this very loudly. I was like, listen, this is probably just going to be another big organization that's not going to try to do anything. Now, I have been so far impressed about what they've done, but then I followed it up with, oh, well, even if they've done good, I'm worried about how the next guy will use it, right? And like, I don't like the idea of the big government like very much at all, right? So whenever you're saying, yes, is this scary? Yeah, I absolutely think it's fucking scary. I don't like the idea that someone can be deported to another country, but all kinds of shit, scary, Harry. And like, I don't want to say for the greater good because I don't believe that necessarily, but I do see overall him attempting to address these issues that have been brought up. Like I get that you say this person over here is an asylum seeker,
but
right?
like
However, if you
without
came here
due
illegally,
process, though,
then you gotta go. Like I'm sorry, if you're here
to be
illegally,
clear, when we say
you gotta
the
go.
greater good, that we're using like, I hate to be like that, but we're using like commissal party
I'm not even
logic.
saying
Like we're
greater
like, for the greater good, we must harvest the grain from the
good. I'm
peasant.
not even saying that.
I
Though.
know, but like,
I'm saying like kick him out. Like if you're here illegally, you gotta
but
go.
this is why
That's
due
really the bottom
process
line.
is. This is why due process is important, because not only is it a question of people being deported for like dumb reasons, like a tattoo being misidentified as a gang tattoo when it's something for his mom, right? Which is what happened when we're talking about this hairdresser. It was a soccer tattoo and a tattoo that was like, I think, from like a famous soccer player and something about his mom, right? Really the really gang stuff, really hard stuff there. A gay hairdresser with a tattoo of his mother is the hardest image I can imagine. A gay Venezuelan hairdresser with a tattoo of his mom. I can't think of how, as an ICE immigration enforcement, you walk up to a gay hairdresser with tattoos of his mom. How do you look at that man and say, this is a threat to America, load him on the plane? It's kind of, it's a little silly. Okay, we've been going for a while, so I want to make sure we get to other topics if we can.
Sure. Yeah.
Just one last thing on the economy and manufacturing. We have lost manufacturing jobs because of the recent trade war. We've lost auto manufacturing jobs in Iowa and Michigan. We've lost manufacturing jobs from those who have to import components from Canada and other places in order to, place them in American produced cars. Because there's not really many American cars that are produced by goods only. Actually, I don't think there's really any major car that's produced by components only produced in the United States. There's some that's produced 70 or 75% in the United States, but 20 to 25% of your car parts being placed with a 10 to 25% tariff. Actually, no, it's a 10% tariff, then placed upon another 25% tariff because there was a specific tariff on auto manufacturer, like auto dealers and stuff like that. And the amount of tariffs get placed, it changes depending upon how many countries you pass through. So if it was something, for example, made in Canada, sent to Mexico, and then sent to the United States, you're actually stacking the tariffs. And so some of these companies have decided that it would make more sense to lay off the workers who are on these lines that are relying on those components, because they understand that the prices they're going to have to pay on those American manufacturing cars are going to lead to less consumption. And we're seeing stock increases for O'Reilly Auto Parts in relation to this, because the market is making the bet that people are going to repair their cars instead of buying new American made ones. I cannot hear you.
Oh, yeah, I was just Scotty. That's interesting. The O'Reilly Auto Parts thing. I didn't know that, but it would be something to look into what the ripple effects of that would be. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I see this argument, right? But like, let's talk about a little more about the deportation, right? Because it does tie to the economy. Kind of what you just said about the manufacturing jobs. I've seen people argue that food prices are going to fly up. Right. I've seen people talk about how overseas now with the tariffs and all these things, it's going to cause things to drive up. When what's interesting to me is like I've always argued that the Republicans Party and the Democrat Party never actually switched. The Southern Democrats just became the modern Democrats. And it's interesting that y'all are making the same arguments as Big Cotton pre-Civil War about these issues. Like, oh, if we get rid of all the illegals, all these prices are going to go way up. It's going to be bad for the economy. Oh, we shouldn't deal with these slave nations. We should like dealing with them is fine. It's okay because guess what? It's going to keep prices good down here. I didn't know that the Democrats like why are the modern
Well,
Dems so pro-slavery? I think yeah, if prices might increase, it might be a good thing if we get rid of the modern day wage slavery with illegal aliens. Which basically only benefits Monsanto. Are you a big fan of
look at
slavery?
here. Look at here, good sir. I do say,
Yeah, that's what you're doing.
I do say so right
Yeah,
here.
you got the pipe.
Over here in the no look. Okay, this is
You just
this
need a
is,
mint
no,
julep. You got that perfect.
this is reducing what slavery was. What we have is undocumented people who have moved into the United States because they wanted to seek a better future for themselves, not people held under gun, forced in order to produce goods with no pay except of basic lodgings provided to them. What I would like to see in our immigration system is, of course, if anybody's a violent criminal, I don't want them in the United States. But for those like the Maryland father who was deported, who was working in I believe he was working in production of like aluminum in the United States. He was literally working to build this country in America. Like that's the type of people I would want here, and I want them to be naturalized. I want them to be become American citizens so they can contribute and continue to build a better future for themselves and their family, and use that personal familial devotion to see a better future for their family turned into the same devotion that all of our families came from when we saw the Lady Liberty and came to Ellis Island. That's what I would like to think to have, not slavery.
Well, so it's interesting you say that, right? Like, I always talk about what the American dream is, right? And I have a good friend. His name is Juan, and this man was illegal, and he became legal. He works 3 jobs to this day. He's popping out 3 kids. He tells me, "Oh, I live American dream." I'm like, "Why? What's going on?" He's like, "I just bought a new Porsche. I got a new house. I got a fat American wife. Oh, life is good, Gipsy." And it's crazy because I see this guy doing it, right? I'm like, if this guy with no American education, I don't even know if he had an education in Guatemala, can come here, learn a whole new language, and work 3 jobs and make it. I think the American dream is alive and well if you want to try hard enough, right? And became a citizen. It's great. It's really good feel good story. Now
The waiting lines are
absolutely
killer, man. The waiting lines are
sure.
killer.
Listen, I'm actually very pro-immigration. I know this is gonna be a rare Republican thing. I want a secure border and I want an easier immigration policy, and so that we know who's coming and we get more people that want to work. And because I think there's benefits to having big immigration, and we see that all the time economically. Now, I want it legally done, and that's a big portion of that. And I think the people that have jumped this line, because there is a line, and it's unfair to people who have had to do this the legal way
Well,
and worked for all those years. You talk about fairness. That's unfair.
here's the
Like,
thing, right? But I also, it is true that deporting a lot of these people are going to have a negative. If we deport everyone who's here undocumented, we're going to see a real contraction in the economy, and we're going to see contractions in specifically industries like construction, which are highly reliant on undocumented labor. And when we have a housing crisis where we need to build, that might be a problem if you really want to approach that. And so I don't think deporting every single person who here is undocumented is necessary. Definitely, if we can come to a mutually beneficial agreement with the people who are here to help naturalize them, as long as they're productive, healthy members of society, and they're not, doing something that would be uncouth to their neighbors or whatever. So my thing is, I understand that we want to have laws and we want to have borders, but we also need to understand that the passion of a man willing to fight for a better future for his children is not something that will ever be constrained by borders. And so we need to make it easy enough for them to fight for them for our benefit and their own. And we currently don't have that system. And so people are going to jump the line because they love their children more than your laws.
well, let me try to build a bridge with you, right? Because I think our immigration policies would be kind of similar based off what you said so far, right? I'm okay with everything you're saying. Right, I'm just a little more harsh on the security aspect than if you came here legally, right? But on the other side, this is what I offered before the election, and this wasn't to you, right? But I offered this on multiple panels. I said I would be willing to even say, let's give blanket amnesty. And I broke from my conservatives. If we set blanket amnesty and we even give a date, like January. This was like in 2020, like three, like at the beginning of the year. A date of 2025, of January 1st. So about a year, a little more than a year, right? To come in here. If you're here before that time, all you gotta do is show up, and we'll give you your citizenship, right? But I want people, y'all, to grant me after that date, we build the greatest DMZ border style shit on both sides of the border, on the Canadian border, on the southern border. And I brought this proposal to all sorts of people. And the Republicans, although they're like, well, I don't really like the amnesty, my fellow Republicans, they were like, we would give you that deal because we would eventually get the secure border, and these people that are probably most of them want to work. We'll even grant them that. And I was like, oh, interesting. And when I took it to people on the left, and this wasn't you, they said, no, we will not do that. Absolutely zero possibility. And for the life of me, I can't figure out why. Because it seems like it was giving them what they wanted, and then it gave the Republicans what they wanted. But then when we talk about, like, you and I try to build a policy where everybody can win, okay, well, there's many on your side that won't play that game. Like, would you have taken that deal?
Sorry, could you say that one more time? The
Yeah.
specific deal, could you shorten it?
Yeah, yeah, sure. Basically, if you're here, so this was like about a year before the 2025. I said, hey, if you have till January 1st of 2025, if you're here in America, you get full citizenship, amnesty, or you get naturalization path. But you're going to get whatever the Dems want on the max on the immigration. Let's give it to them if you're here illegally. Then on the flip side, at the same time, after that date, everybody's going to kind of come legal, and we're gonna have the biggest border security set up DMZ style ever, so that we on both sides there in Canada.
I would do
Right
it
side.
on the well, on the conditions that however we set up the border was not so, and it's going to be hard, was still overbearing that it slows down trade to a point that it's going to hurt border communities, or it's going to hurt those who are relying on that, as well as making sure that the wait times aren't like 20 years. So somebody has a kid, wants a better future for them, and is told, well, only once your kid has properly joined one of the local gangs or your case even going to get seen.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with. Oh, yeah, I would like. Yeah, I would definitely want more judges hired. I want the process speed up, like all that. Like, and I've offered that, but they didn't want to give me the security aspect. And so I feel like there's a large contingent of like, and they're old school
I'm
Republicans
fine.
that
I'm
are
fine
like
with the
have to vote.
security aspect as long as it's not like literally like somebody crosses the border, you dome them, right? Like you.
Sure. Yeah, cool. Oh, cool. Then that's what I'm saying. I want it secure, so anybody that comes here, you after this date, you have to come legally, right? And it doesn't harm trade. But we got drones and heat, whatever it
To be
takes,
clear,
right?
though, a
And
lot of the people who are coming are people who are coming to, like, when they cross the border, they immediately go to like immigration officials and they say, "I am seeking asylum," right? So under the system, like, you're
sure.
still gonna get all those people.
All right, that's fine. And the point that I'm making here, right, is that I think there's a contingent of Republicans that I think I probably follow this more than people. I am fairly Trump supporter-y, right? But I also feel like I follow this contingent of Republicans that it's like, well, the old Republican Party's gone. The modern Dems, there's no middle ground. You can't work with them. And when we offer things, it's like, y'all are like, no, we won't give you the security even if you give us the border. Like, and
Well, no,
so
there's
it's basically, you know,
here's another example. I'm fine with voter ID if
okay,
the
oh, that's
government
interesting. All
gives
right.
you the voter ID right when you become 18. You turn 18, the government's like, welcome to voting. Here's your ID. You don't need to go sign up to anything. You're now in the system forever, and you're taken out when you die. If you want to vote, you want to vote. If you don't, you don't. But you have the ID to
Yeah,
do
and
it.
they pay
We'll
for
send
it.
it to you
Yeah,
once
sure.
every 2 to 4 years if you lose it.
Yeah, or you might have to go down for a new photo, but you don't have to pay.
Yeah, but
Or if
on
you lose,
that
you have to pay a
system,
new
you
photo.
get rid of the economic barrier, you get rid of the access barrier, and you still get the security. So I'm fine with
Sold.
that, but nobody's gonna like that because then it gets rid of a lot of the games people can play with the voter ID, which is let's make it so student
No, I
IDs
don't think
don't
that's
work.
a problem.
No, for example, a lot of these states it'll be student IDs don't work, which are primarily used by youth voters, which primarily vote a certain way, and the ways that they'll cut it out. And there's been multiple cases which judges have ruled this way that they're specifically choosing the types of ID. I'm not just saying that these types of tricks is only things that like only one party will ever like try to game an election, but this way is one that's been traditionally done by Republicans by trying to restrict certain forms of ID from being used and saying other ones can. So that's why I would want to cut through that complaint altogether by making it you get it when you're 18 while you get the security.
Well, so here's what's crazy, and this might be actually give you a little hope. Then I don't know. Like, I mean, find some kind of light in the darkness. All right, I think that like Trump, right, is a populist answer to the status quo problems. Right, I think that Bernie was
Okay,
kind of the populist answer on the left.
I have more confidence in Bernie Sanders becoming president in 4 years than that. So
No,
I've
oh sure, then he'd be
but
the
look,
populist.
let me hear it. Let me
Well,
hear it.
okay, so the way I see it, Trump is a populist answer from a lot of people to the problems with the status quo. I think Bernie was an answer as well, but it was on the left and right, and so that's why we see a big transfer of Bernie Bros. Right. So when I say this, I look at this right. I think your proposal would sell with a lot of like modern MAGA people. Would be like, well, okay, why not, right? And maybe some older conservatives would have issues with this because of the games, whatever. However, part of the MAGA thing is that they don't like the uniparty old conservatives. They don't like the game. They want this to be for the people. They want populace. And I think that maybe this would be part of that pruning process. And I think you would be able to sell that to MAGA as opposed to selling that to the Republicans. When you say, hey, let's pay for all the ID, everybody gets
I
free.
think
Right.
I have never met a Republican on one-to-one basis that I say this and they are like, no. There's some people who are like, it should be hard to vote. It shows that you care by going through the I've met some people
You
who
know,
think that, but this is the problem. Like, not everybody, like, voting's not their number one priority. They care about their kids, they care about this, they care about that. Some people are already dissuaded with democracy and they're like, it's all a fucking scam anyway. And if they interact with the system and then it's hard to interact with, they're gonna be like, I knew it was a scam, and they're gonna walk away. And I don't want that to be our system. I would want people to feel that it's easy to participate because I want them to be encouraged to participate because then we'll all be better when we have more people thinking about solutions to our common problems.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of the point, I think, is that people are sick of the status quo, and that's why Trump got elected, and that's why Bernie had so much support, right? People want a drastic change. And it's interesting to me because we brought up the economy, we brought up those, that
But to
5
be
years ago,
clear,
2 years ago,
Trump is now a
6 months ago.
representative of the status quo. He's going to become a representative. He's already becoming one. So the status quo, for example, the economic status quo that's going to be born by this trade war is going to be his status quo. And so, like, I just want to be clear, in 4 years, it's going to be the status quo election
Sure.
against Trump. You do realize that, right?
Yeah, it's always the status quo that actually gets Trump. But what's interesting to me when you say that is that even look at his first term has not been as much change, but some of the people were like left over from his first term, like the lower levels and stuff. And it seems to me as he came in the first time, didn't really know what to expect, and he was kind of like beaten into being their stock Republican candidate. All right, maybe not quite so much,
Mhm.
but now he's got his whole movement behind him. It seems like he's got his
Now,
mandate, and it seems like he's much more pushed out a lot of the old guard. And so I don't know. I think yeah, it will become the new Trumpian status quo as opposed to like a Republican one. I
so
think that's interesting. However, he's very, very much against trying to do what the like even if that's not the establishment, he's very much against what the current establishment is. Whether it's
let's
Republican
I
or
want to make sure we get through the rest of this because I don't want to
sure,
spend
go ahead.
too much time. This has been fine. It's just there's a lot more I want to get through. Number
Yeah,
three
absolutely.
on my issue is free speech. I think Trump has been an anti-free speech president through and through, both through the way he's interacted personally and the way he's trying to interact legally. There's the old issues, which are still, like, to me, significant, but of course have not been significant to the right, which are things like flag burning, which he wanted to have like legal penalties for. But it's the way that before he ran for office, he tried to sue Bill Maher for jokes against him, like these types of personal vendettas that I've had against those two issues for a bit. But recently, he sued a pollster for polling him wrong when we're talking about the Iowa poll that had it that him actually losing Iowa. That person's now being sued by Donald Trump for election manipulation. Now, it's one thing to be like, hey guys, I don't think this poll is garbage and you shouldn't trust this person. It's another thing to take that person, sue them for a bad poll, and just claim it's election manipulation. Because the problem is, Trump will say that about the polls all the time, that they're manipulating this election, manipulating that election, or different ways the media is manipulating the election. And if this is going to be the charges, I could be charged with manipulating the election. The polls can be charged with manipulating the election. Everybody can be charged with manipulating the election. And it's not just the pollster. He's talking about going after the broadcasting rights of news organizations that report news against him that he doesn't like. We saw him remove the Associated Press from the press poll. And this isn't illegal, but I think it shows the principle of the man because they refuse to redesignate the Gulf of Mexico as the Gulf of America. And the reason why is the Associated Press interacts with the whole world, and the rest of the world hasn't recognized that name change, and they want to keep it that way. And whether they want to or not, who cares? They're a respected news organization. I know the Associated Press people. I've smoked with the Associated Press people. I've seen those people give their put their lives on the line for journalism. They deserve to be in the press pool as much as anybody else in that room, especially more than a few of the news organizations that have been brought into that room. And so I see this repeated pattern of behavior from Trump that treats the press as the enemy. And now I fear that with him surrounded by loyalists who I don't think care as much about the First Amendment or press freedom, that they're not going to restrict him as much when he tries to do things like, hey, let's go after the people who polled me bad. Let's go after the news organizations that report me bad, or former administration officials that commented mean things. For example, remember that guy that said it was the safest election of our times after the 2020 election that Trump immediately fired, that election security official? Well, now Trump's opening an investigation into him. Because he said it was a secure election. And he's using the administrative state as a weapon towards his political enemies, as if this man had done something against the country. He hasn't said, hey, here's evidence, or here's this, here's that we found. It's the same old, he said it was safe. It wasn't safe. It was rigged. We're investigating him. It was pure. He didn't buy the election lie. So we need to use the investigative state against him. Now, investigations, I don't know how, I'm not really that worried about just an investigation. What matters is what comes after the investigation. But for me, this seems like a clear pattern of behavior where Trump's punishing people for speech, and the guy who's supposed to be, tell him how like it is, free speech king from the Howard Stern show, is kind of softy when it comes to dealing with speech, at least when it comes to dealing with it without using the state as a weapon or the legal system.
So yeah, you touched on a few interesting things there, right? Um, Let me ask you a question. So, say like before I really give you the answer response to that, I just saw you clarify something. Say you said at the end there, you're not worried about the investigation. You're worried about what will come after the investigation, right? Okay. So, I guess here's my question. This is purely hypothetical, and this is not a got you. I'm just kind of curious. If they investigated this guy and they did more investigations overall and all sorts of stuff, they did find some sort of election fraud, or they'd find some interference. What's the level of evidence that you would need, that you like from them, that you would accept, if there is one?
Really, honestly, if this guy,
Sure.
if they could find any evidence that this man, whether it be an email or some sort of corresponding text or some picture of him meeting with or some frame of reference that he had evidence of election fraud as an appointed Republican official and hid it from the Republican president of the United States for whatever reason, which I mean, I don't believe this guy somehow holds the key to the stolen election Trump hasn't been able to crack,
Yeah, I'm not saying
but if we found something, I would be so surprised. I would be genuinely I would be genuinely surprised. But really anything, like a text, an email, a message in a bottle.
So I guess my
But
thing is,
also,
like, so
here's
I
something
guess,
that scares me. What if we do this whole investigation and what we get from this is, hey, this guy actually hired a hooker one time. And so we're gonna, it's funny, but this is what happened with,
not the hookers.
but when it comes to, like, for example, like Hunter Biden, due to like how all the like political infighting became around like the families, eventually a lot of his, like, for example, gun charges got more attention than a normal person would. A normal person would not be seeing the gun charges that Hunter Biden saw because of the political attention he had. Now, that's the consequence of living in a famous life and benefiting from that, and not separating yourself from that. That's the consequences of it. I'm not saying that he should have been treated differently. What I am saying is that once you like try to dig into people's backyards, you end up hitting a few skeletons. My question is, are they going to find anything that is in relation to election interference? Because if they don't, and they just pull out a different skeleton, then to me, this is still abuse of the investigative state.
Yeah. So I mean, Uh, yeah, it depends on what they find. I'll get after that. I actually tend to agree with you on the yeah. If you start digging into somebody's past, or they found a hooker, like yeah, I don't give a shit about that. That's not what I want to hear. So yeah, I agree. It is interesting that you say that they found actual evidence of it. I guess we'll see what they find. But because I do see, I haven't found not before anybody goes, oh, Gibbs is a conspiracy theorist, election fraud guy. I'm not. I don't think there was a fraudulent election. I'm just going to be sympathetic to some people's point. Whenever we see like that Connecticut mayor that they're having the big that trial now, and they said the videos of those people walk or retrial that they're having where they walked out with the ballot stuffed and they literally are giving high fives to each other as they stuff it. I feel like that makes some Republicans go, corruption. We need to look. And now, I sure maybe they do need to look, whatever. And I also would have to see some pretty substantial evidence to
But
believe that
let's also
there
remember,
was
like, he was
evidence of
fired
fraud.
right after he said it was a secure election. It wasn't like, okay, you say it's secure, let's investigate, and if it isn't, we'll fire you after. It was, you said it's secure, fired. It's impossible for this election to be secured because he didn't want it to be secure because
Well,
he needs it to not be secure so he can say it was rigged and so the results can be invalidated.
well, that's why we need voter ID in general for everybody. But but we come back to your other thing. Let's talk about what you first started with though. Is the
Trump's free,
pollster?
yeah, the pollster. You think that was fine?
Yeah.
The lawsuits against the pollster?
So
And
I
should it
actually
be the
kind of want to.
president doing this? Should it really be the president of the United States suing pollsters for giving them bad polls? What type of
So
president does this set?
I'm a little bit interested in this actually.
Couldn't it scale? Well, one last point on that. I'm sorry to interrupt, but just think
Go ahead.
about the possibility for suppression because people talk about how polls affect actually how people think about people. Once they see, somebody's up, it might affect how. So I understand why someone would want to affect the polls one way or the other with lawsuits, but that's the point. That's what's scary about it because then you could get people to produce, oh, this poll says that the president's about to lose. It's really different than all the other polls. I don't want to release it because I don't want to get sued for manipulating the election. But these are my results. I used the methodology I wanted, but I don't want to get sued by the president. I don't want any pollster thinking that.
I think the key thing this is not, once again, that's not a gotcha thing, but the methodology you wanted, I think, is the key part of this, right? And I want to see how this plays out. And on the surface, I want to say I agree with you. I'm not a huge fan of them going after pollsters. However, I do this. Let me just caveat that, right? I I think polls do matter when how they influence people. I think that matters to how they influence people is a different discussion, but I think they influence people. And I've heard a lot about interference. I don't like bot farms. I don't like. I think that could be an interesting thing. If one guy makes 1,000 bots and starts commenting, is that election interference? Is that free speech? I think that's something else should be tackled, right? But when we look at the poll, I'll give you an anecdotal example, and I know everybody hates anecdotes, but I'm Hispanic. I know people don't believe, but I am. And I live in San Antonio. And if you know anything about San Antonio's demographics, it leans left. It's a Democratic city, as most urban centers are. And I got a call for a poll several times. And they would ask me all the questions, and I'd give them all the answers. And at the end, they'd be like, well, how do you identify as? I'd be like, well, I'm Hispanic. They go, okay, are you white Hispanic? And I'd say yes. And you identify as Republican or Democrat? And I'd say Republican. And then they would go, oh, okay, well, we already have too many white Hispanic Republicans for this poll. We're actually not going to count it because you're outside of our test size group for what we're doing. And that happened at least 3 times. And I'm not saying it's rigged. And I'm not saying it's inaccurate poll because I don't know what their parameters are. This is why I think our methodology, right? I don't know what that is. So I'm not saying it's rigged. However, it does lead me as an anecdote when that happened to me here to go white Hispanic Republicans are too big of a number you're getting in this random poll that you're just calling San Antonio numbers on. That seems suspicious. If you there's probably
Look, I think
2% of the
the thing.
population that's why Hispanic Republicans in all of San Antonio. So whenever I
Well,
see that, and I
I
go,
think that I don't know what has to. I don't know the methodology enough, but I think there's always a
right,
question of like. I mean, you don't want to overpull one demographic. I think they match it to demographic
that's
areas.
true.
Like they're like, oh, we need to
Right.
get it specifically matched up to like we need
So
as many white people in the poll as there are white people in this area. Like that's
sure,
what they
but
try
my
to
point is
do.
But when it's like white Hispanic Republicans in like a Democrat city where our population is probably 2% of the
Well,
entire
true,
population,
but maybe they
it does.
called already 2 people, and then boom, they got him.
Sure, I guess. But you can see how that seems suspicious at minimum, right? And this is why I think you said the key words is what is I use the methodology I want. Okay, what is that methodology, right? If it's
Let's
scientifically like fair methodology or even like arguably fair, I think that that's fine.
okay,
But if it's clearly biased and you're trying to get a clear result in
but
order to
like
mislead the
even
public,
even if this
then I
is
think maybe that
let's
could be interference.
let's
Like,
say
don't you
that
think?
even was the case. Now, in this case, we're talking about Ann Seltzer, who was one of the most respected pollsters in the United States
Was
before
it fraud?
polling. Uh, it was a woman, yes.
Well, no, not it's also but what we're describing now, wouldn't that be fraud though?
Oh, I thought you said wasn't it
Like,
abroad? I thought no, yeah, no,
no,
it
no,
was
no. All right, yeah, no.
no. Was it fraud? What do you mean? Was it fraud? Was the poll
So like
fraudulent?
if you use so like if you make a poll, right, and I purposely use not like fair like data recovery methods in order to get a specific result. Would you agree that's like a base you're basically defrauding the people you show this poll to of accurate
I
information by
mean,
like showing them
I think you're.
wouldn't
I
that
don't know
be
if it'd be
interference?
fraud, but you were certainly lying to them. You're certainly
Right.
misleading people. Yeah, I'm not saying that there aren't bad pollsters. My problem is twofold. Number one, there's been no evidence provided that Ann Seltzer specifically manipulated this after a pretty credible career in polling. And number two, I don't like the president of the United States being the one to do it, considering then there would be a type of, how people talk about like silent censorship, the type of censorship where you keep your mouth shut because you're scared of the repercussions, right? That type of censorship can be real if you establish
A
an idea
turd
that the
is a turd.
president is going to go after you for a bad poll
That
for
man
them.
needs to be brought home. But El Salvador was in a place where
Okay.
it
Wait one
truly
second.
didn't
Somebody
have
donate
I mean,
$50.
choice.
One moment.
And
okay.
more than half their
Give me
economy
like
was
2
being
seconds here.
stolen by an extortion racket. Hence the popularity for harsh punishment of crime and gangs.
Thank you for the $50. Let me read the message. The man needs to be brought home. Amen. But El Salvador was in a place where it truly didn't have much choice. I'm not arguing that they didn't have to find a way to deal with the gangs, but there is still a question about the civil rights of the people in El Salvador. Um, and more than half their economy was being stolen by extortion racket. Hence the popularity for harsh punishment. No, I know why the Bukele is popular. But I also know about the civil rights violations of his government, and I like certain civil rights protections in this country, and I have no interest in seeing an American exported to a country, or really anybody who deserves due process within the American system, exported to a country that doesn't really have it and is a pretty notorious, prison system. I mean, we saw the video. The way they treat the prisoners in that way is meant to be demeaning. Is meant to be dehumanizing. Is because they're dealing with some of the most violent people on the planet. And then when you throw like some like Venezuelan diaspora gay hairdresser in there, I don't think he's gonna do great in that environment. Thank you for the $50. Also, I want to say that we're gonna go through the last sections with Gibbs here because we've been talking for a bit, and there's some areas I wanted to make sure we hit on. So now, if you have any question for Gibbs, if you can donate and you can get your question asked, okay, this is how we make our money. Thank you so much for the $50. Grassroots has him on, big support of the channel, and I'll ask Gibbs your questions, okay? So you can for all of you in chat who have been raging at the conversation, you can throw your question out here about Dylan. This is why Gibbs has been right about everything, and you're wrong, which I'm sure you're all believing. So let's get to the next area, free speech. So far though, did you agree with me on any of the you agreed with me though that Trump is stepping out of line as president and going after
I
these, for example, the broadcasting licenses. That's not something the president of the United States should be targeting for these news companies. And he's not targeting it for Fox News or Newsmax or OAN. It's only the news companies that cover him poorly that are having their broadcast licenses attacked. And certain company, I think a lot of these media companies, like I think CBS caved on that case and gave that money up, not because of the facts of the case, but because they are intimidated by the president of the United States.
I I don't know. Like this comes back to like what we call interference, right? Like and like free speech. I'm a little torn on this Because on one side, I definitely am much more of a free speech absolutist, right? I would almost rather let them do fraudulent polls or let the guy with 1,000 bots commenting influence election. I would almost that, right? But on the flip side, if we're going to pretend that there's election influence, like with the, either say Russia's doing something or China's doing something or whoever's doing something, and it's something we care about, then I don't know. Like, and I don't. I honestly, I don't think that MSNBC and CNN and some of these ones together. I don't think they were doing anything illegal, right? I don't think they were purposely misleading people, right? I'm not gonna. That's not what I'm gonna say. I do think there are people, and maybe this pollster's one. I don't know. That's I guess we. I'm okay with at least letting the investigation and the case play out some to see what they bring before I make a decision on that. I do have more of an issue with the FCC going after these things. However, if we're gonna say interference is a thing, and you have two major news organizations who are look like they're extremely wrong to the point that it's suspicious. It almost seems like you're trying to rig something by doing that, right? And like that could be.
But this is the problem, Gibbs. Though.
Gibbs
Wait 1
wears the
second.
$350
$5.
billion number Trump kept using when talking about aid to
Okay,
Ukraine.
guys. I promise we'll
If
talk
not
about Ukraine
found, why
next.
did
I
he
promise.
repeat it?
Everybody wants to talk
What
about
was
Ukraine.
his goal?
Everybody feels like the chickens have come to roost a bit on the Ukraine topic. Sorry, I was gonna say something. Could you repeat what you were saying before I interrupted you?
Oh, oh yeah. I mean, basically, I would be sympathetic to the argument that okay, these organizations were so hilariously wrong, right? That
Oh yes,
the
we're
only
talking
way
about the
they can do
pollster.
that,
So
yeah, is either
okay,
they could do it, or I
this is
think
the
it's much
thing
more
though.
likely the
If you're
pollster would do
okay,
it.
put yourself in the position of the pollster though, and this is my problem with the president doing this. Period. Even if it was election manipulation, if you're a pollster and you just saw the president sue somebody for this election manipulation after they released a poll for him that was very bad, and then they come and they find after they use their what they believe to be credible polling that gave him a bad polling result in the state that is an outlier, or maybe not even an outlier, because there could be an environment where Trump says they're all doing it together, it's coordinated, then could that not discourage pollsters from releasing those results, not out of the credibility of their organization being hurt by a bad poll, but out of intimidation from the White House and slap suits, essentially?
I won't like argue that that wouldn't cause that, because it could, right? But that would be like an unintended consequence, or
Wait,
maybe
how do we
intended
know
consequence.
that? This is the thing. How do we know it's an unintended consequence? Because you and I both know that, these, when we're talking about this pollster, there is yet to be any evidence found that they were doing this purposefully, or that their credible background has been called into some actual dispute, that they were paid by somebody to manipulate the election. And until we find anything, the easiest
Well, how do you
thing to
find something,
believe.
though?
Well, you investigate, you try to look, but this is the problem, though. When we talk about investigating this pollster or these lawsuits against, for example, Bill Maher for those jokes, at what point do we say this is a pattern of behavior of him going after those who go after him verbally with legal trouble? Because he did it to Bill Maher before he was running for office. He's doing it to the he did it to the media companies before. He did it to now this pollster, and now he has all these broadcast rights being targeted. We have the people being thrown out of the press pool for not agreeing to his unilateral name changes, and this seems to be a pattern of behavior.
I mean, but I feel like it's always been that way, right? Like every president always uses lawfare to go after people they don't like.
Every president has sued pollsters for bad polls. I don't know
I don't know,
about
but
that.
listen, hold on.
Every
I'm not
president
talking about that
has targeted the
specifically. Hold on.
broadcast or the broadcasting
I've
rights.
said every president's used lawfare. Every president's used
Yeah, but
lawfare to go after
this is
their
different,
perceived
though.
enemies. No. Is it really like? And this comes back to my
Give
thing,
me a
though.
comparable example.
Okay. I just want to talk about this one example you just brought up first, though, right? Let's say they do find evidence that this guy used the fraudulent method, right? And this is where the question is: at what point is even that protected under free speech? Versus
Honestly,
we do
Gibbs,
need to stop influence. Like, where is your line?
If we find anything, you'll be the first person to call. I am confident, and they're not going to find anything on Seltzer. Just like I'm confident they're not going to find anything on these other guy, because none of them really even have. when you look at these cases, I don't even see the
Well, if they
motivation.
find that, good. But then this is almost a good thing for your argument, right? So say they investigate, they
Well,
find
yeah,
nothing.
it's
And I'll tell
good
you
for
how
my
this is beginning
argument
of
that yeah, it's a witch hunt
no,
or they're
no.
trying to intimidate them.
Well, but hold on, hold on. This actually be good long term for you, right? And I think it would because it would set the legal precedent. If they go there, they find nothing, and they go, "Oh, this is a witch hunt," yada yada. Guess what? That's gonna be a legal precedent that's gonna be harder to overcome in the future. That's supposed to be something you're praising and be excited about, right? Like, so
No,
you
well,
almost want this
the
investigation
problem,
to go
no, it's
forward
slap
and see that.
suits. It doesn't. The problem with slap suits, it's not even that, and it's like why CBS caved on that case. It wasn't because CBS couldn't win that case on the merits. They 100% could. It was the fact that they didn't want to drag that court case out and have a long impending court case with the incoming president of the United States, who has long talked about how the press is, the enemy of the people and has had an adversarial legal and presidential relationship with the press. They didn't want that confrontation. They decided to cave on the deal. And so when we're talking about cases like this where we're suing people frivolously, it's not about whether they can win or
Well,
not.
it's
It's about
frivolous,
having to
though.
buy, it's about having to pay for lawyers. It's about having to go through the legal process. You think Ann Seltzer, who is retiring, this old woman, is like, oh, I'm gonna go out there and I'm gonna enjoy having to pay for these lawyers. I'm gonna have to enjoy going to court. I'm like, she's an old woman.
Well,
She
who
doesn't want
gives
to
a
have to
shit
do
if she
that.
enjoys it? Yeah, who gives a shit if she enjoys it? Like, I mean,
But
like,
that no,
sorry, if you
that's the
actually
problem.
were
But that's
doing,
you get it. You get it though. You wouldn't enjoy it. So the question is
no,
it
you
worth it?
good?
Just don't release the
Well, let's find
polls.
out. Well, let's find out, right? Like, I mean,
But
like,
no, that's
you're
scary. Then
you,
you're
you
intimidating them.
no, no,
You're
no, because
intimidating
if
them
it
with
goes to
legal
that,
costs
it's
and the
not going to be
possibility
slap
of
suits.
of of,
It's
of
not going to be
debt,
slap
of legal
suits
debt.
if this one doesn't pass, like if it doesn't pass muster, right, and then it doesn't go anywhere. There's not going to be able to. There's going to be a legal precedent that these are just frivolous lawsuits, and nobody's going to
But
want to hear
you
it going
you would
forward.
you would have to go through the process
But
first to find
the
out if
only,
it's
yeah, but
frivolous
we're
or
going
not.
through it now. We're going through it
But it's a case by case basis.
well, exactly. So you're
That
saying we
means it would
shouldn't look
happen
at things on a
again.
case by case basis?
But that's the no. It's
This
not
is
that
the
we should look
American
at it a
legal
case
system.
by case
So you
basis.
like the
It's
legal
Trump
system when you
abusing the
like it, but you
system.
don't when you
It's
don't.
Trump abusing the case by case basis to
Oh,
intimidate
no.
pollsters.
Okay, so you're okay, as opposed to trying to get him locked up before the election, mid-election on frivolous charges that are over like 10 years
What
old
is
on
this
some of these cases.
whataboutism?
It's okay. Hold on. It is whataboutism. I am going to do whataboutism here because I said earlier, all the administrations use lawfare to go after the enemies. Right? I would even call that case more of election interference than what Trump's doing by going after a
Okay,
pollster. But you're up
so
at all. It's equivalent.
let's
So this is why whataboutism is not
okay.
always just like
So
whataboutism. Because
let's
these are equivalent
compare.
analogy to
Fine.
things.
Let's
Okay.
compare, and then we're gonna move on because I don't want to. Because again,
Sure.
we have a limited time. So
That's fine.
in the case of Donald Trump, let's just talk about what happened in Mar-a-Lago. He had his home raid, and then he had to take his mug shot. How humiliating! How awful! Election interference,
Oh,
some
terrible.
might say. Now, the reason that happened was because the former president of the United States failed to list the declassification of certain classified documents. He then took those documents to Mar-a-Lago, his private home. The National Archives, which is the organization that is responsible for holding these classified documents, see that they're not within their possession and they have not been declassified or gone through the declassification process. So they approach the president and they ask him, could you return these documents? He returns some. He does not return them all. He instead has his staff hide them in his building and shares certain parts of classified information with journalists, including audio tapes which have since been released of him talking to the press about
Kazim has
invasion plans
donated
for Iran, which
$5.
would be
Ask him
very,
how he'd have felt
very
if Obama did an
classified. Wait one
executive
second.
order deporting Trump because Trump did the birtherism conspiracy.
Thank you so much for the $5, Kazim. Ask him how he'd felt if Obama did an executive order deporting Trump because Trump did the birtherism conspiracy. Okay, no. Thank you for the $5. Okay, where was I? Oh yes. So then Trump hides these documents, continues to hide them, and then they raid the compound to retrieve these documents after he failed to turn them over to the National Archives for for years. So that's what happened with Trump. Now let's go over to Ann Seltzer. She released a poll. So I understand with oh, well, election interference, people were affected by Trump's house being raided by the mugshot. Yeah, but Trump also did provable crimes. We have yet to find any evidence that Ann Seltzer or this official he's investigating or all these broadcasters or Bill Maher or any of these other media organizations he's sued, and any of them have committed crimes or perjuries against him. He has yet to win any of these cases he has filed in this manner either, even the ones from the past, like, for example, the Bill Maher case.
Yeah, so this is, you're gonna really hate this answer. I I already see it. Well, one, because of whataboutism, and it's because of whataboutism, is that this is what the average Republican and average MAGA person is gonna tell you is they don't give a shit about none of what you said. I'm gonna tell you why. Because they're gonna sit here, they go, oh, hey, Biden had classified documents in a fucking thing in his garage where his felon son had access to, who should not be anywhere near any of that. And his son was at cabinet meetings. We don't care. They don't care. So, like, I know that's not fair to everything you just said. That's what they're going to argue, right? So what
Okay, but let me just hold on,
just let me finish. Let me just like, so they're going to just go, it's ticky tack, baby back bullshit. And so when you're sitting here going, what about this and what about that, and we're doing the same thing, like, I guess you're just picking sides. Like, I'm actually sympathetic to kind of what you're saying with the free speech thing and the argument about, like, oh, like, are these pollsters going to be stopped from doing it? And but my thing is, I want to see this first case. I want to go through it and see if there is some kind of methodology thing where they're actually purposely rigging results.
What happens when there
that
isn't?
would be election interference. Well, what happens when it isn't? Then good. Then that's gonna, if there isn't, that's gonna stop these ticky tack cases from going forward.
Are they?
Because that's gonna set the legal.
No, it won't.
Well, it
that's
should,
that's not how this. No, the way that it works.
Well, then they find something else. They go after
this is the
somebody else.
problem. I was trying to explain this earlier. The way that these cases have to be evaluated. For example, like slander cases, or like some of these cases that are put forward by, I remember that coal executive was really famous for throwing out slap cases like crazy in order to suppress people who were talking about his business. There's a few businessmen who do this. The way they abuse the theory is that people don't have the cost to go out there and pay for lawyers and pay for stuff to go actually fight these cases, so they just retract. Right now, Ann Seltzer is a wealthy person. Maybe she'll be able to do it. She's an old woman, so maybe she won't want to bother doing it now that she's trying to retire. I don't know. But the problem is going to be, these cases are going to have to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. And if the president decides to continue pursuing these cases, then the president is being set that, okay, if you release a bad poll against the president, this is what's going to happen to you. And if we don't find anything behind this being, manipulation or whatever, then what are we going to say? What was the intention of Trump?
Yeah, but how do you know it until you look? How do you know it? Like, so, like, you have a problem with the looking, right? Okay, cool. If it looks and it's
to be clear, does this mean that Biden can open investigations into Rasmussen if they ever give him a bad poll, or he can sue them and make them have to go get lawyers and stuff like that? I don't like can't somebody else, even if it was manipulation, why the president going to say to go to protect his own name in the polls?
So he's directing the government to do. He's the president, right? He's going to go, okay, I think that this was fraud. I think they were in cahoots. Let's look into it. We'll try this person first. And, like, okay, they try it and they find out there was nothing there. Right? Cool. That's the legal precedent. Then cool, going forward, it's gonna be harder to get these slap cases going. I get that you're arguing that it's an intimidation thing, right? But guess what? Maybe if you're gonna do cases like this, right, and say these guys are going, the intimidation is also true if they do find something. Well, this is gonna be like, oh shit. Well, now we actually have to make sure our polls are meeting a legal standard that's scientific going forward. I feel like that would be something we would all want to ensure non-biased polling that's trying to rig an election. But you're already like, that would be intimidation in a good way, right? But, like, we're only focusing on this one hyper-partisan, like, situation on the one side.
But the problem is,
you're not even
okay, where's Trump's lawsuits against those who pulled him way ahead?
Well, they ended up him being right. He, like, won in a landslide.
No, I said he didn't win a landslide, but I said way ahead. He got a plurality of the vote. He got like 48 to 47.5.
He swept all the states he was told he wasn't going to sweep. I mean, that's a landslide.
Yeah, that's okay. If we're saying, to be clear, he swept the swing states. If you want to see a landslide, go look at LBJ or Ronald Reagan, or go look at a real landslide. Okay, let's not. It's actually still one of the closest. Like, it's still like a close election, relatively speaking, when you look at the actual votes in the states. What are we talking about? The electoral college votes. Point is, it wasn't a landslide.
Sure. Yeah, but what I'm saying is like he won all the states he wasn't supposed to win, right? I would argue that's a landslide. We don't have to get into like
Well,
the
it was an
popular vote.
wait, an
Maybe not
electoral
so much.
college. What is the electoral college votes
But
is not a
hold on,
direct representation of what the
hold on.
people believe.
I,
You would just look at the votes for
well,
that.
Well, here's my point with this, right? So let's talk about the ones that said he was going to win big, right? My argument would be, right, they were using unproven data, clearly, or whatever, that they got there, right? And so clearly they need to tone their model because he still won. It was more accurate than the ones all saying he would lose. I mean, they got the winner right. They just didn't get the margin right, as opposed to,
No,
oh, this one says he's going to lose in a massive
the
loss.
margins
That's
are pretty
historic.
important.
Well, hold on. They picked the right winner, though.
The margins would be what would impact public consciousness because the idea, oh, Trump's up 12, I guess Trump's great. That's the idea people believe how polling affects people's perception. So it would be still, even if you won, it would be if somebody says Trump's up 12, you would investigate that poll as well to see if they manipulated it in favor of Trump. No?
Sure, we could, I guess. I don't care. I mean, like,
So why is he
I'd
only
be okay with that,
investigating the
too.
ones that are polling him
Well,
poorly?
why would you investigate the one that picked on your side? I mean, that's dumb. Like,
Because he wants to punish the ones that polled him poorly and not punish the ones that polled him incorrectly but positively.
yeah, but if you find that hold on. Listen, like, I come on. Let's be a pragmatist. You're not going to go after your own people, right? First, right? You're going to go after the people that came for you.
Oh, you think
come on, man?
okay?
Like, you're acting like
So you think Trump's gonna sue?
Like,
Trump is gonna sue.
Why do the Dems sue
Rasmussen.
themselves?
Trump's
Like,
gonna sue Rasmussen for giving him a good poll. That's gonna happen
come on, bro.
next
Like,
once he's done with that
do you
seltzer.
think? Do you think that no, he's going to go after the next one that fucking screwed him over, right? Like, why would you? Why do you think that if
This is
Biden
why,
won,
but this right
he
here
would go
is
after
why
hold
he
on,
shouldn't do
hold on.
it. This is why he shouldn't do it because he's
But
not
they
an
all do it.
impartial
Every side
arbiter.
does this shit, doesn't it?
The
Neither side
president
is
shouldn't
that.
be doing
That's
this.
my point.
He
They're
has
all
too much
doing this
power.
already.
We should
This
not
is just
give the government this much power.
but they've already had this much power for decades. At least Trump's now working for the American
president
public.
of the United States should not have the power to intimidate pollsters to give him good polls.
You act
That's what
like
he
they
should
don't
do.
already. They have literally been going out. Listen, for decades, for all my life, as long as I've ever known, the Dems and the Republicans have used lawfare to intimidate and go after their enemies. My entire life, at the local level, at the
Whether or
US
not,
level.
wait.
Oh well,
Would you agree? Let me
like you're
finish.
acting like this is something new.
I'm not
Well,
saying
I
it's
was just
anything
talking,
new.
you know.
I'm not saying that. Okay, politicians have also used a theft and fraud and murder and all sorts of things, but that doesn't mean these politicians have the power to do it. They don't have the power to do these things. And so when the president is open, let me finish my statement. So when the president of the United States is openly doing something, for example, I would say that the United States president probably has the power to make someone disappear, right? Now, he's probably had that power for a long time. Now, the president having that power in very discrete instances that they have to keep under wraps in order to keep being able to do it, because it probably would not, almost certainly not be legal in the way it's being done, but it's being done to the worst of the worst terrorists, hopefully. Now, there's a difference between that and the president of the United States in a conversation with a foreign leader saying, we need to deport the homegrown ones to your prisons too, huh? The homegrown ones are next. And then the president's White House staff saying, well, we're looking into deporting American citizens to foreign prisons. There's a huge gulf here in difference when we're talking about having the power to do it versus these happening in these instances. And Trump is trying to expand the power of the president. In fact, Trump has said that he wants to open up the libel laws.
So what you're saying is, this is interesting. It's because we're like walking and chewing bubblegum here. Like, so Trump ran on the government being real inefficient. That was a major sticking point. Are you arguing that Trump has somehow, in 4 months of being in office, has somehow more power than any other president in history? Is that what you're arguing, or does he have the same amount of power?
More power than in any president in history. In some ways, he's stretching the presidential power in ways other presidents haven't. So in some ways, yes. In other ways, no, just due to the fact that he doesn't have a majority in Congress that is big enough to do certain things that he would like to do. And so he's trying to do them around Congress's authority, extra constitutionally, outside the bounds of the Constitution.
What you're saying is that he's been efficient and been effective, right? And his biggest complaint is that we have all been inefficient and effective the entire time. I'm just saying, you're mad that he's doing exactly what he said he was going to do. That's what you're mad about. Every president in history has used lawfare to go after their enemies. Every single fucking one, right? Like, and so when I'm sitting here, at least in our lifetimes, so when you're sitting here going, oh, he's doing these things, Trump's literally, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't with this argument. Because either A, Trump is this boogeyman who came in and was so effective and so efficient that he's able to do more than any other president, which means A, that he was right, or B, he's just somehow, it's just, or B's just in here just making shit up as he goes.
You know what, Gibbs? You got me. You're right. Trump is the most effective crook in Crooktown. I agree. He's the best at lying. He's the best at stealing. He's the best at conning.
Hey, at least he's our guy,
He's
bro.
the best at ignoring the Constitution. He's the best at deporting American citizens. He's the best at taking our money and funneling it overseas to Gaza and other places while not releasing housing policies. He's just the best on earth at backstabbing our allies. He's just the best clown in clown.
Allies, these guys have been taking advantage for years.
Let's move on to the last question of the day, okay?
Right.
Let's move on to the last question of the day. Where's my fucking ceasefire, Gibbs?